Influence. Chapter 1. Sam was halfway down the stairs when he smelled toast. It was early. The light through the kitchen window had that washed, colorless look it always had before the day properly woke up. He moved quietly. He always did. Mia was at the counter when he came in. She was dressed for work. Blue hospital scrubs, neat and practical. Furry feline ears sat atop her head, and her long tail moved lightly behind her as she worked. Toast was browning in the toaster oven. A plate waited beside it, ready. Everything was already arranged, the way she liked it, as if the morning would go more smoothly if nothing was left to chance. Sam went to the table and sat down. Mia noticed him without looking up. Then straight away she stepped in close, leaned down, and kissed the top of his head, right between his soft furry ears. It was a small thing, familiar, something she had done for as long as he could remember. "Morning, son," she said sweetly. "Morning, Mom." She set the plate of toast in front of him and nudged his mug closer. Sam wrapped his hands around it, welcoming the warmth. His tail curled around the chair leg without him thinking about it. In this space, nothing about him ever felt out of place. "I'll head to the shops after you leave," he said. "Pick up what we need." Mia glanced at the clock above the door, then nodded. "Thank you, Sam. Take your time with breakfast, though. There's no urgency." She sat opposite him for a moment, sipping the last of her tea. Sam noticed the faint shadows under her eyes and looked back down at his breakfast. He had learned early that pointing those things out only made her worry. "I'll see you later," she said, standing. She smiled at him, brief but real, then crossed the kitchen and took her bag from the hook by the door. Sam stayed seated while she moved around the room, both of them following the same quiet routine they always did. Cup rinsed, bag settled, keys lifted from the bowl by the door. The front door closed with a soft click. The kitchen grew still again. The light through the window had not shifted yet. Sam finished his breakfast in the quiet. A few minutes later, jacket on and backpack slung over one shoulder, he stepped outside. The morning air was cool and clean. The street already awake in small ways, curtains shifting, a door opening and closing somewhere nearby. A dog barking in the distance. Sam set off at an easy pace, backpack now fully on, thumbs hooked under his shoulder straps, tail moving lightly behind him as he walked. This part of town was quiet and spread out, a place of semis, low fences, and driveways he could walk past without overthinking anything. He had grown up here. Everyone had seen him before, though that didn't mean they actually knew him. As he passed the corner store, the older man behind the counter looked up. "Morning, Sam." "Morning." They had exchanged the same greeting for years. A little farther on, a woman watering her plants paused to watch him go by, then turned back to her flowers. He noticed. He always did. People stared. There were not many like him. Downtown there was a cafe where he knew a couple of other Neckos worked. Sam had seen them there sometimes, moving between tables with practiced care. People liked it there. Some said it was because the coffee was good. Others apparently just liked being around Neckos, though few of them would ever admit it out loud. They came to watch, to linger, to feel gentler by proximity. And then there were those who did not go there at all, those who saw only difference. Out here on this side of town, there was just Sam and his mother. He didn't know for sure, but he suspected there were only a handful of Neckos living in the entire town. He stood at the road crossing waiting longer than he needed to. Cars passed in pairs and threes. He always stayed back from the curb, giving them space, watching cautiously until the light changed and told him it was safe to go. At the small strip of stores, he stopped first at the bakery. The bell over the door chimed when he went in. The woman behind the counter smiled at him a little too brightly, then softened it when she realized. "Morning, hun," she said. "Same as usual?" "Morning," Sam said with a small smile. "Yes, please." She wrapped the loaf with care, slower than necessary, the way she always did for him. Sam paid, thanked her, and stepped back outside. He settled the paper bag into his backpack and continued on, aware of how his ears and tail drew attention, and how people often pretended they had not noticed. He didn't mind being seen. But being misunderstood was different. He'd learned that could lead to problems, so he tended to avoid busy places whenever he could. By the time he finished the rest of his errands, the town had properly woken. The streets were louder now, doors opening, engines starting, too many sounds arriving at once. He adjusted his route without thinking, choosing quieter pavements, staying close to the edge of the sidewalks where he felt less exposed. A group of teenagers passed him, voices overlapping, laughter sharp enough that his shoulders tightened before they reached him. One of them glanced at his ears, his tail, then muttered something Sam didn't catch. But he knew the tone. At the end of a row of apartments, a man stepped out from behind the corner too quickly and nearly collided with him. Sam jerked to a stop. His shoulders snapped in, heart spiking, feet already shifting back before his brain caught up. "Sorry," he said automatically. Seeing Sam's startled reaction, the man paused for a moment. He took in the ears flattened against Sam's head, the way his shoulders were hunched, as if bracing for impact. "Oh, hey, it's all right," he said, slower now. "I didn't mean to startle you." He stepped back to give Sam space, then quietly moved on. Sam stayed where he was for a second, waiting for his pulse to settle. This happened a lot. Sudden movement, close space. His body always reacted first. It was part of the feline side of him. Neckos were wired that way. Sharper senses, faster reflexes, instincts tuned high. Useful in some situations, exhausting in others. It meant they startled easily, flinched faster, reacted like prey animals even when there was no real danger. It was a known trait, one people joked about sometimes. At school it had often made him an easy target for cheap scares. Someone shouting from behind a locker, a sudden boo in a corridor, followed by laughter when the inevitable flinch or jump happened. Sam had learned to manage it by breathing through the aftermath. He took a deep breath, felt the tension ease from his shoulders, and carried on. At his gate he paused and looked back toward the main road, leading into town. Cars streamed past without pause, the sound constant and distant. Tomorrow would be volunteer work at the hospital. Monday would be school. But today, Saturday, was all his, and there was only one thing he wanted to do. Sam went to his room, picked up the book he'd been reading, and settled into his favorite chair with it. As he read, the story took hold quickly. Page after page, it pulled his attention away from the town outside, away from the noise and the constant awareness of himself. The characters were bold where he was careful. The places were vast, dangerous, and alive in ways his own world never was. He read without checking the time. Chapters slipped by unnoticed. The afternoon thinned out around him, quiet and unclaimed, while his focus stayed fixed on the page. By the time he finally looked up, the day was gone. Influence. Chapter 2. The Hospital. Sam signed in at the volunteer desk just inside the main entrance. He took his time writing his name. He always did. The hospital hit all at once, voices overlapping, machines humming, the sharp, clean smell that never quite faded. He focused on the pen moving across the page until his breathing evened out, and the noise became something he could step into instead of something that pressed at him. When he clipped the official volunteer's ID badge to his jersey, it sat slightly crooked, and he straightened it with care. He had been a volunteer here for a long while now. Long enough that the routine came easily to him. Sign in, badge clipped, trolley collected. No one ever questioned why he was here. One look was enough. The same soft feline ears, the same tail, the same quiet, careful way of moving through busy spaces. Anyone who'd seen Mia working the wards could see it immediately. Mother and son, even when they weren't standing side by side. Mia was already working. Sam caught sight of her partway down the corridor, blue scrubs moving quickly between rooms, a clipboard tucked under her arm, and those unmistakable feline ears atop her head. She did not see him, and he did not call out. They rarely did. This was her space now, and he respected that. Seeing her here, occupied and sure of herself, eased something in him. She was where she knew what to do and how to be professional. He collected the volunteer trolley from its place by the wall and set off. The work was simple, and that was part of why he liked it. There were no decisions that could go wrong, no moments where someone's health rested in his hands. He moved cups from one place to another. He emptied bins before they overflowed. He held doors so people pushing beds did not have to slow or struggle. Staff spoke to him as they passed. Sometimes used his name, sometimes just a thank you, sometimes nothing at all. It felt right in a way few other things did in Sam's world. Here, he did not feel out of place. In one of the day rooms, an elderly man sat with his blanket half on the floor, tugging at it with fingers that did not quite do what he wanted anymore. Sam knelt and lifted it back into place, folding it carefully so it would stay. "There," he said, quietly. The man looked at him for a moment, then smiled gratefully. "You're a good lad." Sam felt a quiet warmth at the words. He did not hear things like that very often, at least not outside this place. He nodded humbly. "You're very kind," he replied. He did not volunteer here to feel important or receive praise. He volunteered because it eased things. Each small task finished was one less thing waiting to be done, and often that thing would have fallen to his mother. He knew how long her days were, how many demands followed her from room to room. If he could remove even a few of them before they reached her, then this was where he was meant to be. He pushed the trolley on, listening to the sounds of the hospital waking properly now. Voices growing louder, footsteps quickening, the day beginning in earnest. This was a place where people needed help. He was glad he could contribute, even if only in small ways. Later in the morning, Sam found himself nearer the front of the building, watching people come and go. Visitors arrived with coats half-buttoned and uncertain expressions. Others left more slowly, papers in their hands they had not yet read. A worried-looking woman sat alone on one of the patient lounge chairs by the window, her handbag clutched tightly in her lap. She stared straight ahead, not at the doors, not at the busy road through the windows, in the distance, but somewhere in between. Sam noticed her and slowed. He had seen this kind of waiting before, people sitting alone, not knowing how long it would be or what they were waiting to hear. This was part of why volunteers were here. He knew from past experience that people often eased when he spoke to them, or just sat with them. Something about the way he looked, the ears, the tail, the way he kept his voice low. It disarmed people more often than not. He did not look rushed. Most of all, he did not look like someone about to deliver bad news. He moved the trolley, leaving it by the wall, and walked toward her. "Excuse me," he said, keeping his voice low. "Would you like some water?" She blinked, as if pulled back from a long way off, then nodded. Sam went to the dispenser and fetched a cup, placing it gently into her hands. She took it with shaking fingers. "Thank you," she said, though she did not drink yet. Sam hovered by the empty chair beside her. "Is someone with you?" he asked. She shook her head. He waited a beat. "Would you like some company for a while?" he added, keeping his voice low. She did not look at him, but after a moment she nodded. Sam sat down, leaving a small gap between them. After a moment he spoke quietly. "I'm Sam. I volunteer here at the hospital." He paused, then added, "If there's anything I can do to make the waiting easier, please do let me know." She turned toward him this time and held the look, her gaze changing, as though she had finally seen him properly. His ears, his careful posture. How slight and delicate he was. Someone who looked as though the world asked more of him than it should, yet kind enough to stay and keep her company anyway. The open, slightly nervous kindness in his face. It mattered, and for the first time in a while, her thoughts eased. "I'm Monica," she said quietly. "Thank you." She glanced down at the cup in her hands, then back at him. "I think I'm all right," she added. "But I appreciate you asking." Her shoulders lowered as she settled back into the chair, her grip on the handbag easing. They sat together after that without speaking. Beyond the glass, the hospital car park gave way to open ground, and farther still, the main road carried fast-moving traffic at a distance. Monica's breathing slowed, enough that Sam noticed the change. After a moment, Monica spoke again, her voice lower. "Do you do this a lot?" she asked. "Sit with people while they're waiting?" Sam hesitated, then nodded. "Sometimes," he said. "A lot of people don't like being on their own in a hospital. It's one of the reasons volunteers are here." She looked at him for a moment, as though the question had carried more weight than she had meant it to. "That's very kind," she said. "Very sweet of you to offer." Sam felt warmth rise to his ears and looked down at his hands. A small smile found him. "I just try to help out where I can," he said, "even if it's just sitting with someone." Her smile stayed with him this time. She did not turn away. A few minutes later, a nurse came out and addressed Monica by name, her voice calm and practiced. Sam stood at once and stepped back, giving them space. Monica rose and followed the nurse a short way, then paused and glanced back. "It was lovely to meet you, Sam," she said. "Thank you for sitting with me." Sam nodded, his ears warming again. "It was my pleasure," he said quietly. She gave him a warm smile before turning and going with the nurse. He waited until they were out of sight, then returned to the trolley and pushed it back down the corridor. Sam saw his mother again near the end of his shift. It was brief, the way these moments usually were. A pause between tasks, a corridor that emptied just long enough. Mia stepped out of her room, carrying a small bag of linen, and stopped when she noticed him. "There you are," she said, her voice easing as soon as she saw him. He smiled, the kind that came easily only with her. She glanced up at the clock on the wall. Nearly noon. "Time's gone fast this morning," she said. Then her eyes moved to the trolley beside him and back to his face. "Have you eaten?" He nodded. "A small energy bar earlier." She did not comment right away, just took him in for a second longer than necessary, as though quietly checking he was all right. Sam met her gaze, calm and open. Whenever she was looking for, she seemed satisfied. For now. "Have you had a good morning?" she asked. "Been busy?" He nodded. "Yes, a bit." He hesitated, then added, "It's been all right, though." Mia gave him a look at that, half knowing, half amused. "All right usually means you forgot to stop and take your break." He smiled again, smaller this time, the kind that admitted she was right. They stood there together for a moment, mother and son, matching feline ears and tails, two familiar shapes in a place that rarely slowed enough to notice anyone. A voice called for Sam's assistance further down the corridor. "I'll finish up here," Sam said. "Then I'll head home." "Good." She shifted the bag in her hands. "I'll be late tonight. Double shift." "I heard." He hesitated. "You going to be all right?" She reached out and straightened the volunteer ID badge on his jersey without asking, then let her hand rest briefly on his shoulder. It was a simple mother's touch, familiar and reassuring. "I'll be fine, Sam. You don't need to worry," she said. "And thank you for coming in again. You being here helps more than you realize. It's always nice to spend time with my son, too, even if it's at work." Sam nodded. He did not need her to explain why she was working a double shift. He watched as she moved on, disappearing into the ward beyond. He finished the last of his tasks, and a short while later was signing out at the volunteer desk. He unclipped the badge from his jersey and slipped it into his pocket. The building felt louder now, fuller, the morning calm replaced by constant movement. Outside, the main road carried on without pause. Sam stepped onto the sidewalk and headed for home. Influence. Chapter 3. Monday. Monday morning, another school week. By the time Sam reached the road leading to his school, the noise had already begun to press in. Cars queued where they didn't need to, doors slammed harder than necessary. Music leaked from open windows, bass thudding through the air. Voices overlapped, sharp and casual, already warmed up for the day ahead. The school came into view in layers. First, the sports fields, where a handful of early arrivals were already kicking a ball back and forth, shouting encouragement and insults in equal measure. Then the main building rose behind them, wide and unapologetic, glass catching the light. Clusters of students gathered near the gates. Laughter burst out too loud, then died away. Phones were already out, photos already being taken. Sam slipped inside as soon as he could. The corridor smelled faintly of cleaning fluid and warm food. Lockers banged, shoes scraped. Someone shouted a name across the space, their voice carrying far further than it needed to. Sam often flinched at the louder sounds, but kept moving. People noticed him. Not constantly, not everyone, but enough. Some glances lingered on his ears before flicking away. Others came back for a second look, curious despite themselves. A few smiles appeared, quick and private, as if liking him, someone a bit different, was something best kept quiet. He stopped at his locker and went through the motions he perfected over time. Books out, bag hung carefully, everything in its place. Order helped. A boy from his math class paused nearby. Acne, glasses, the kind who always sat near the front and never quite blended in. He hesitated, then gave Sam a small nod. Hey, Sam said. You good? The boy nodded once, relief flickering across his face at how painless the exchange had been, then moved on. Sam leaned briefly against the locker, tail brushing the cool metal. He knew the noise wasn't going to ease, and he didn't have a choice. He took a deep breath, willing the courage he needed to get through the rest of the day. This place wasn't cruel, not most of the time, but it was built around confidence, around loud voices, easy laughter, noise, and high-energy people who moved through the halls like they owned the space. You either kept up, or you were in the way. He closed his locker and headed for class. Sam always noticed the jocks early, his self-preservation instincts pinging a warning on his radar, often before they even came into view. They moved through the corridor like they owned it, loud without being told to quieten down, big shoulders, confident voices, talking over one another. Teachers rarely stopped them. Other students instinctively moved out of their way. One of them stood out. Callum walked half a step behind the others, taller than most, never pushing to the front, not hanging back either. Sam knew his name. Most people did. Callum ran, one of the fastest in the district, the kind of athlete teachers talked about with open pride and quiet expectations. Callum didn't dominate the space the way the others did. He laughed when they laughed, but later, quieter. When shoulders knocked, he stayed out of it. When voices rose, his didn't. He moved with the group, but didn't feed off its energy. Sam had registered the difference a long time ago. It was the kind of detail his instincts filed away. Callum was the kind of person who looked ahead, not around. He didn't scan for reactions. He didn't perform. That didn't make him less intimidating. It just made him harder to place. Sam kept his eyes forward as they passed him through the corridor. Laughter bounced off the lockers. Someone slapped another hard across the back. The sound grated, sharp and unavoidable. Sam's body reacted first. His steps shortened. His shoulders tightened. His tail drew closer to his legs. None of them looked at him. That was the best outcome. Although, it didn't always mean he was safe. Being ignored by people who could single you out whenever they felt like it carried its own kind of threat. Further along, another kind of gravity had formed. Madison Brooks stood at its center. Her hair was perfect in a way that came from time and money rather than chance. Her clothes were chosen with care, labels visible to those who knew where to look. Expensive enough to speak for her before she did. A small cluster of girls walked with her, arranged around her like punctuation. Her phone rested in her hand in selfie mode, held out ahead with casual precision. The angle never changed. The screen reflected their faces back at her as she talked, as if the moment only counted once it was framed. Madison had a following online, a big one, large enough that teachers recognized her name, and other students learned quickly what happened when she decided she didn't like you. The girls around her moved in time with her. Laughter arrived a beat after hers. Conversation stalled when she lost interest. Attention drifted toward her and stayed there. She glanced up as the jocks went by. Her gaze caught on Callum and held. Not bold, not shy, measured. A smile touched her mouth as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The movement smooth with practice rather than nerves. There was history there. The kind people didn't gossip about because it had exploded. It had ended cleanly. No drama, no fallout, just something left behind. But Madison still watched him like he was unfinished business. Callum didn't look back. If he noticed, he didn't give her the satisfaction of showing it. Sam saw it from the edge of the corridor, the quiet calculation in the way Madison watched Callum. He understood enough to recognize the internal politics of it, and to know that whatever world they were operating in, it wasn't one he would ever be part of. These were the two groups that set the temperature of the place. The ones who decided what drew attention, what mattered, and who didn't. Class was easier. Desks gave him boundaries. Rules gave him cover. He could sit, listen, write. Noise behaved better when it had structure. Halfway through the lesson, a rolled-up piece of paper skidded across his desk and landed in his open book. Sam paused, lifted it carefully, and set it aside without opening it. He already knew it wouldn't be anything good. Someone laughed. Someone else hissed for quiet. Sam kept writing. Another scrap of paper landed near his foot later on. Drawing attention meant being seen, and being seen was rarely worth it. When the bell rang, he packed up quickly and left with the first wave. Corridors were harder again. Movements surged in every direction. The school felt different here. Less ordered, more about who moved aside and who didn't. Near the lockers, a small group of jocks had stopped, blocking part of the way. A younger boy stood awkwardly between them, his bag split open on the floor, books scattered around his feet. One of the jocks kicked a book aside with his shoe, sending it skidding across the floor. The boy flinched and dropped to his knees to grab it, hands shaking as he shoved it back into his bag. It was bullying, casual, routine. Sam didn't stop. He lowered his head and passed by, ears flattened now, tail pulled tight behind him. Nobody spoke to him. Lunchtime brought its own pressure. The food hall was wide, open, and bright. Tables were arranged in a way that made it obvious who belonged where. Sam collected his food and scanned quickly before choosing a seat at the edge, his back to the wall. He ate carefully, quickly, keeping everything close. He'd seen drinks tipped before, plates snatched, laughter erupt around someone who hadn't been ready. Today, he was left alone. He finished early and left before that could change. By the end of the day, Sam was tired but intact. That was always the goal. The walk home took him past the better streets first. Large houses, neat hedges, cars washed even when they didn't need to be. He passed classmates climbing out of expensive vehicles. They barely noticed him. Further on, the houses grew smaller. Pavements cracked. Paint peeled. This part of the walk felt familiar. A boy from his year nodded at him as he passed. Earphones in, jacket pulled tight. Sam turned onto his own street and went inside. The house was quiet. Mia was still at work. He ate something simple at the kitchen table and left the light on when he finished. It made the space feel less empty. Later, he spread his homework across his bed, working carefully, checking everything twice. When he was done, he read for a while. Something familiar, something gentle. Before bed, he left a note on the counter for his mom and placed a meal in the fridge. When he finally lay down, tail curled comfortably, the house settling around him, he let the day go. Tomorrow would come, whether he was ready for it or not. Influence. Chapter 4. Thursday. By Thursday, the week had started to fray at the edges. Sam could feel it in the corridors. Voices louder than usual. Laughter tipping into something sharper. Bags dropped harder. Someone counting down the days to the weekend as though it were a finish line. The jocks were in high spirits. There was a game scheduled for Friday, and it showed. Jerseys appeared under open jackets. Conversations circled endlessly back to plays, to injuries, to who was starting and who wasn't. Energy spilled out of them wherever they went. Sam stayed out of the way as best he could. The day itself passed without incident. Lessons, notes, the usual low-level disruption. Sam did what he always did. He listened, he wrote, he kept his head down and his movements careful. It was only when the final bell rang that things shifted. Students poured out of classrooms and into the open space near the exits. The pressure building all at once. Sam waited, counting breaths, then slipped into the flow and headed for the gates. He almost made it. The noise swelled toward the gates, voices overlapping, footsteps colliding. Sam moved with the flow at first, then slowed, letting the worst of it surge ahead. He always did better that way. Choosing when to move felt safer than being carried. The jocks were already there. They were gathered near the main gate, backpacks dropped, shoulders bumping as they talked over one another. Someone rolled a football between their feet. Their laughter came in bursts, loud and restless, fueled by the end of the day, and the game waiting tomorrow. But there was tension in it too. "Coach is already watching you," one of them said, not quite joking. "You lose your temper again, you're benched," another added. "And then what happens to the team?" Ryan Keller laughed, but it was sharp and brittle, the sound cutting off too quickly. "I told you," Ryan said. "He deserved it." Someone shoved him lightly, the way boys did when they were trying to keep things playful. Ryan shoved back harder, fast and angry, enough that the others stiffened. "Easy," someone said. "Ryan, seriously." They all knew this version of him, the one that often got him into trouble. Sam saw the group early and adjusted his trajectory without thinking. He hugged the edge of the crowd, eyes lowered, ears already angled back, tail drawn close against his leg. He waited for an opening. It came for a moment. He stepped into it. At the same time, another joking shove landed inside the group. One of the jocks stumbled sideways, laughing until he wasn't. He crashed straight into Sam. The impact knocked Sam off his feet. He hit the ground awkwardly, palms scraping, his backpack skidding away from him. The noise around them faltered, conversations breaking mid-sentence. "Careful," someone muttered. Sam was already scrambling up. He grabbed his bag, heart racing, and turned away at once. He didn't look at them. He didn't say anything. He just wanted space. As he moved away, his tail reacted. A quick, involuntary flick. It brushed Ryan's leg. Ryan froze. Then he spun around, face already flushed, eyes blazing. "What the hell was that?" Ryan snapped. Sam turned back despite himself. "I didn't mean to," he said quickly. "It was an accident. I was just trying to get past." The others reacted immediately. "Ryan, drop it. It was nothing. Don't do this." Ryan didn't listen. His voice rose, sharp and uncontrolled. "You don't touch me, ever." He lunged. That was the moment Sam knew he was in real danger. He ran. There was no decision in it. His body moved before his thoughts could catch up, fear driving him forward. He burst away from the gates, feet pounding, breath tearing in his chest. Behind him, Ryan shouted and took off after him. At the same time, the others ran too. Not after Sam. After Ryan. "Ryan, stop it. Think about the coach." Callum was among them, pushing hard, eyes fixed on Ryan's back, not on Sam. Sam glanced back once. Ryan was coming straight at him, face twisted with rage. Behind him were others, running too, shapes blurring together, voices raised. Sam couldn't tell who was chasing whom. All he saw was a group of jocks closing in, the angry one at the front. He ran harder. It was something that happened when Neko were forced to flee. When mortal fear took over, their bodies responded in ways humans simply couldn't match. In those moments, a Neko could outrun even highly trained athletes. Sam was no exception. Despite his slight build and gentle nature, fear unlocked something deeper and ancient in him. The distance opened, fast, too fast for anyone to catch. Behind him, Ryan slowed, swearing, arms hauled back by two of the others. Someone shouted his name. Someone else grabbed his shoulder, hard. "Think about the game. You want to be banned again?" They stopped him there. Further down the path, the group stood breathing hard. Ryan paced, furious but restrained now, jaw clenched, shaking off the hands that still hovered near him. The danger drained away, leaving behind an awkward silence. Someone broke it with a laugh. "Did you see how fast that cat kid ran?" Another voice followed, easier now. "Yeah, that was insane." "It was really quick," someone admitted. "Wouldn't last 5 seconds on the team, though. Built like tissue paper." The banter and laughter returned, filling the space where something worse had nearly happened. Callum didn't laugh. As the others started walking back, he stood there, watching the empty road where Sam had disappeared around the bend. What it left behind in him felt sharp and wrong. Callum had grown up around Neko his whole life. He knew how little it took to push these gentle souls into panic, and he had always hated seeing that fear used against them. He'd seen how Sam hadn't hesitated, hadn't looked back. How he'd been forced into that full, instinct-driven sprint, that only surfaced when a Neko truly believed they were in mortal danger. He understood what it took to push a Neko into that rare state. He'd also seen, firsthand, what came after. The body escaped, but the mind stayed trapped in the fear. The aftershocks could last for days, sometimes longer. It unsettled him greatly, because he hadn't just witnessed it, he had been with the people who'd caused it. Sam slowed when his body finally gave up on speed. His chest burned, not sharply, but with a tight pressure that made each breath feel incomplete. He bent over, hands on his knees, and forced the air in anyway, fast and shallow, until the shaking eased enough that he could stand. He didn't look back. Fear lingered, heavier now. Not the kind that made him run, but the kind that settled in once the danger had passed, when his mind caught up with what his body had already escaped. Ryan's angry face replayed itself again and again. The rage, the way it had tipped so quickly. He hadn't done anything. That thought kept circling, finding nowhere to land. By the time he reached his street, the fear had changed shape. His shoulders stayed tight. His ears stayed low. Every sound made him flinch. He felt watched even when no one was there. Inside the house, the quiet didn't help. It only gave his thoughts room to echo. Sam closed the door and leaned back against it, breathing hard, the weight of how close he had come to being hurt. Not teased, not embarrassed, hurt. The realization made his throat tighten and his eyes sting. He went upstairs slowly and sat on the edge of his bed, arms wrapped around himself. His hands were still trembling. He felt exposed, stripped of the thin layer of safety he had believed existed around him at school. He had always believed that if he stayed quiet, if he stayed careful, if he made himself small enough, he would be left alone. Tonight proved otherwise. That belief was gone, and whatever replaced it had no name yet, only a crushing weight. Influence, Chapter 5, Saturday. By the time Saturday came, Thursday had not loosened its grip on Sam at all. He had gone back to school on Friday because that was what you were supposed to do. He sat where he was told, answered when spoken to, kept his head down. Nobody mentioned what had happened at the gates. Nobody looked at him any differently. The normality felt thin, stretched too tight over something that hadn't settled underneath. So on Saturday, when the hospital doors slid open and let him inside, Sam felt the familiar mixture of relief and tension he always did. Relief, because this place still made sense to him. Tension, because he hadn't forgotten how quickly things could turn. He went straight to the volunteer's desk and signed in, careful and precise with his name as usual. The woman behind the counter found his badge and passed it across with a distracted smile. "Morning, Sam." "Morning." He clipped the badge to his jersey and stepped away, already shifting into the quiet usefulness that was expected of him here. He didn't look for his mother. Mia had started earlier, and they both knew their own routes through the building. There was comfort in that. No checking in needed. No hovering. Just the quiet hum of work. The morning settled into a gentle rhythm. Sam carried notes, fetched water, sat with some patients who wanted company but not conversation. The tasks were small, but they mattered. And for a while they helped push the noise out of his head. Unbeknownst to him, on the far side of the hospital grounds, Madison Brooks was there too. She sat on one of the wooden benches beyond the car park, near a strip of grass visitors used when they needed air or space. It was far enough from the main entrance to feel separate from the building itself. Madison and her friend Lena were killing time. Lena's grandmother was inside with her mother, and there was nothing for them to do but wait. So they had stepped outside, phones already in hand. Madison scrolled, then filmed a few seconds of Lena laughing, deleted it, then adjusted the angle again. To her, the hospital was just background, another place to frame herself. "Wait," Madison said, eyes on her screen. "The light's better like this." They were only there until Lena's mother came out and drove them home. Madison stayed with Lena, but her attention was fixed on her phone and what she would post next. Back inside, Sam was finishing a task near the rear corridors when a raised voice carried distantly through the building. It wasn't shouting. Not yet. But it cut through the low murmur of the hospital in a way that made his shoulders suddenly tense. Sam paused, heart picking up speed for no good reason. He told himself it was nothing. Hospitals were full of moments like that. Pain, fear, confusion. Voices rose and fell all the time. Something in his chest tightened. The same instinctive pull he'd felt days earlier. The one that didn't wait for permission or explanation. Something wasn't right. The corridor ahead opened toward the side exit, the one staff used when they needed air or a quicker route between buildings. The distant raised voices grew clearer, urgency sharpening them. "Please wait," someone shouted. The side doors burst open as a woman ran out. Not particularly fast, not athletic, but desperate, upset, uncoordinated. She wore everyday clothes, a cardigan half-buttoned, trainers that looked like they'd been pulled on in a hurry. A hospital bracelet still hung loose around her wrist. "Hey," someone shouted behind her. Sam turned just in time to see her stumble across the pavement, hair loose around her face as she ran. She didn't look back. She didn't slow down. Then the words reached him. "She's going to harm herself." The shout came from somewhere deep inside the building, a man's voice, loud with panic. "Stop her, please, someone stop her." Sam didn't think. His body moved before his fear could argue. He ran, bursting out of the closest emergency exit door. The world narrowed instantly. The sound of the hospital fell away, replaced by the roar of traffic up ahead. The road beyond the grounds was already visible, 3 lanes wide. Lorries, coaches, cars rushing past at high speed. Sam could see the woman was heading straight for it. He ran, pushing forward with everything he had, not thinking about distance or effort, only about reaching her first. She wasn't slowing, she was clearly intending to run straight out into the road. He reached the verge before she did. It was a wide strip of grass between the hospital grounds and the main road. Sam skidded slightly as he stopped ahead of her, heart hammering as he turned to face her. He planted himself there, not on the curb, not yet close enough to be pushed into traffic, but close enough that she would have to go through him to reach the road. He lifted his arms instinctively, palms out, blocking her path. "Please," he called out, panting, terrified. "Please stop." She ran into him hard, her whole body, shoving at his chest and shoulders, trying to push past him, forcing him much closer to the busy road. She was shouting now, her almost delirious words tumbling over each other, her face twisted with rage and pain and desperation. "Get out of my way! You don't know me! Don't touch me!" Sam staggered but stayed upright. She outweighed him. Every shove drove him back a half step whether he wanted it to or not. His arms shook with the effort of holding his ground. His legs felt weak beneath him, the road now terrifyingly close. Lorries and cars thundering past just a few feet behind him. Every instinct in him screamed to get away, to protect himself. But he didn't. He couldn't. He was scared of how close it all was to going wrong. She shoved against him again, harder this time, her hands scraping against his jumper. She screamed abuse at him, incoherent and furious, her voice raw with emotional pain. Sam flinched at her words, and the sharp sting of her nails against his skin. Still, he stayed, fighting to hold his ground. Beyond her, Sam could see people sprinting toward them. Hospital staff in uniform, moving fast across the car park. Help was coming. He figured he only had to hold his ground for a few more seconds. "It's going to be all right," he said, forcing the words out, even as his chest felt tight. He wasn't sure he believed them himself, but he needed her to hear something that might calm her down. His arms were trembling as he continued pushing back against her. Fear continued to surge through him, sharp and overwhelming, but he kept his feet planted, his body set, desperately trying to block the last bit of grass between her and the road, doing the only thing he could think of to keep her alive. The hospital staff arrived quickly. They moved with trained urgency, gathering around her without hesitation. Hands took the woman's arms. Voices stayed low and firm. A syringe appeared, swift and practiced. The struggle faded unevenly, her shouting breaking apart into hoarse fragments before her body finally went slack. They lowered her carefully to the grass. Only then did someone notice Sam. He was still standing where he had been, just inches from the road, arms still spread, palms open, his body locked in place as if he hadn't realized it was over. His face had drained of color. His breathing was shallow and panting. "Sam." Nurse Helen's voice called over the noise of the traffic, sharp with recognition. "Sam, you okay?" He didn't reply, just stood there in that same pose. Helen didn't hesitate. She hurried forward and grabbed him as his knees buckled. His arms dropped, limp. He was trembling hard now. Mark, a male nurse, was there moments later, helping steady him. "We've got you, Sam," he said, steady and close. They carefully led him away from the edge of the road. Behind them, a stretcher had already been deployed and was on the move, the woman lifted and being carried back toward the building. The urgency was gone. The moment had passed. Together, Helen and Mark walked Sam slowly across the grounds and back into the hospital building. They took him to a quiet room, away from the main corridors. His legs barely cooperated as the adrenaline finally drained out of him all at once. The incident had hit him harder than it should have. Thursday's fright still hadn't fully loosened its grip on him yet. And this extra dose of fear had crashed straight into what was already there, compounding the effect. They sat him down in an armchair, and Helen pressed a bottle of water into his hands. He drank, spilling some of it without noticing. Sam stared at the ground. "I thought she was going to die," he said. Helen's expression changed. "You saved her, Sam," she said softly. "That was an amazing thing to do." The words landed heavily. Is she safe now?" Sam asked. Helen nodded. "She is, thanks to you, Sam." Mark checked Sam over briefly, blood pressure, pupils with a torch, asked a few questions, waited while Sam struggled through the answers. Physically, he seemed okay. Emotionally, he was clearly still caught in it. Mia arrived not long after. She took Sam in at a glance and went straight to him, arms hugging tight around him. He leaned into her without resistance, a few tears slipping out before he had time to stop them. They kept him for observation for a while. Nurses he recognized checked in on him more often than they needed to. Someone brought him a blanket without asking. Someone else made sure Mia had a chair pulled close. By the time they sent him home, the careful attention around him had steadied him more than time alone would have. The taxi ride home with Mia passed mostly without conversation. Sam watched in silence through the window as the city slid by, his reflection faint and strangely unfamiliar in the glass. He felt steadier than he had earlier, but the feeling was still fragile, as if it could slip if he thought too hard about it. At home, Mia stayed close without hovering. She checked in occasionally, but then left him alone when he needed quiet. The house felt different that night, not unsafe, but not fully settled either. When Sam finally went to sleep, exhaustion took him quickly, but sleep did not come cleanly. Vivid dreams dragged the day back in fragments. The rush of traffic, the woman's weight hitting his chest, the moment where he had teetered at the edge of the busy road, wondering if he'd be hit by traffic. For tonight, it stayed with him. Influence. Chapter 6. The False Video. Monday morning felt wrong before Sam could say why. The air was the same. The street was the same stretch of pavement he walked every weekday, past trimmed hedges and parked cars, past houses that grew larger and more polished the closer he got to school. Nothing obvious had changed, and yet. The first car slowed as it passed him. Not enough to stop, just enough for the driver and occupants to stare a second too long before pulling away. Another honked, sharp and deliberate. Laughter followed from an open window. Sam's ears flattened without him meaning them to. He pulled his jacket tighter and kept walking, eyes down, his heart starting to thud, for no clear reason. By the time he reached the school gates, the feeling had grown teeth. People were looking at him. Not the quick glances he was used to, or the passing curiosity. These looks held, slid sideways into whispers. Phones were out, not hidden, not subtle. Someone muttered something as he passed, a voice low, sharp with judgment. Another person broke eye contact the moment he glanced up. Confusion spread through him, cold and prickling. His first instinct was that he had done something wrong without realizing it. Missed a rule, stepped over a line everyone else could see. He slipped inside the building as quickly as he could. It didn't help. In the corridor, voices dipped as he passed. He heard his name once, followed by something he couldn't catch. A girl he didn't know lifted her phone and pointed it at him openly. When he flinched, her expression shifted to open disgust, before she turned away. By second period, he could no longer pretend it was coincidence. "That's him," someone said from behind him. "No way." "Yes way. Look." A phone was passed between desks, heads bent together. A ripple of sharp whispering moved through the room. Sam sat rigid, his hands curled tight in his lap. His ears burned. Every instinct told him to make himself smaller, invisible. The teacher cleared her throat and kept talking, but her eyes flicked to Sam more often than normal, unreadable. At break, the whispers followed him outside. That was when he finally saw it. A boy he vaguely recognized from maths stepped directly into his path, phone already raised. "Is this you?" he asked. Not cruel, but not gentle. Before Sam could answer, the screen was pushed closer. The video was short. Too short. A woman stood on a strip of brass, visibly distressed, her mouth open in a silent shout. Sam stood in front of her, arms out, working hard to block her path at every turn. From this angle, it looked deliberate, confrontational, wrong. There was no sound, no road, no staff, no context beyond the moment itself. Just that brief moment, 10 seconds at most, looping over. The caption sat beneath it, firm and certain. This Neko was harassing a woman outside the hospital yesterday. She was visibly distressed, trying to get away, and he continued to block and intimidate her. This behavior is predatory. This behavior is dangerous. Women should not have to tolerate this just to exist in public spaces. If this doesn't disturb you, ask yourself why. This was the moment Sam stopped being a person at school and became the villain of a story people passed between screens. "But that's not," his voice cut out. "That's not what happened." The boy snorted. "Sure." The phone was already turning outward. The camera switched to face Sam this time. Sam recoiled, his heart racing. He stumbled back, breath coming too fast, his vision narrowing as the phone stayed trained on him, recording. He remembered the road, the noise, the fear, the staff running to help. None of that was shown. He turned and ran without thinking, cutting across the yard, ears flattened tight, shouted comments following him across the open space. From the steps near the gym, Callum caught sight of Sam hurrying away in obvious distress. He'd seen the video clip earlier that morning, crowded around a phone with the rest of the jocks. But the moment Madison's caption was read aloud, something in his gut shifted, rejecting it outright. "That's messed up," someone had said beside him. "What a creepy perv." Now watching Sam, seeing that same anxiety from Thursday replay itself, Callum felt a hard jolt of wrongness. This wasn't right. Whatever people thought they were seeing in that video, it wasn't what he'd perceived at all. Callum was certain the video was a lie. Sam hid himself away for the rest of break. He stayed near the science block, half hidden by the corner of the building, sitting on a low wall with his shoulders drawn in. His hands shook, no matter how hard he pressed them flat against his legs. He kept replaying the clip in his mind. Not the real moment, the broken one that had been posted. By the time the bell rang, he felt hollowed out. More lessons blurred past. He wrote when told, read when told. At one point, he realized someone across the classroom was filming him again. At lunch, he avoided the dining hall completely. He took his packed lunch behind the gym, where the noise thinned and the air made it easier to breathe. He ate slowly, barely tasting anything. Someone approached nearby. Sam felt it before he saw them. He looked up nervously. It was the tall jock. Callum, one of the angry pack who had been running after him on Thursday when he panicked and fled. Fear spiked hard. Sam scrambled to his feet, dropping his lunchbox, already half-turned to flee. "Hey," Callum said quickly, "wait." He'd stopped and raised his hands, palms open. "It's okay. I'm not going to touch you, I swear." Sam froze. The lunchbox lay on the ground between them. Callum took a cautious step forward and bent to pick it up. Sam flinched, hard. Not away, down. Arms coming up, shoulders folding in. A reflex he didn't think about, as if he were bracing for being struck. Callum straightened at once, heart jolting. The reaction hit him harder than any accusation could have. Sam hadn't just been startled. He had expected pain. Callum felt something twist sharply in his chest. He'd stepped forward to help, to do something small and ordinary. and Sam's body had answered, as if Callum were dangerous. That hurt more than he was prepared for. Although a strong and athletic jock, Callum wasn't built to scare people. He'd grown up around Neko. Not many, but enough. One side of his family had married into a Neko family, and their kids were his age. They'd grown up together, crossing in and out of each other's houses, sharing summers and long afternoons in the same streets and backyards. Neko were rare in the town, but they weren't rare to Callum. They were the people he'd grown up with, and if he was honest, the kind of people he preferred to be around. He knew they were more sensitive to tone, movement, and presence. Not because they were broken, but because growing up different had taught them to be extra cautious. And something about that had always disarmed Callum around them, made him slower, quieter, more careful in the right way. His instinct around Neko had never been dominance or control. It had always been protection. And he had always striven to be the kind of person they felt safe around. And now Sam, small and scared in front of him, clearly believed Callum might hurt him. The fear in Sam wasn't just unexpected. It forced Callum to suddenly see a version of himself he had never believed existed. In his mind, he wasn't like that. He'd never been like that. He was the one who softened around Neko without thinking, who watched his tone, who made space. He liked them, always had. They were the people he felt protective of, not the ones he scared. But Sam hadn't flinched at nothing. This Neko was clearly afraid of him. The realization stuck fast. Not anger, not offense, something worse. The understanding that in Sam's eyes, Callum had become the very thing he hated seeing others be. The thought was devastating to him. Callum forced himself to breathe out slowly. He loosened his grip on the lunchbox and took a small step back, putting space between them on purpose. "I'm sorry," he said again, quieter this time. "I didn't mean to scare you." He held the lunchbox out carefully, arm extended, making sure his body stayed still, his posture non-threatening. "You dropped this." Sam hesitated. "You've got nothing to fear from me," Callum added. Another pause. Sam took the lunchbox with shaking hands, eyes finally lifting. Callum swallowed. "I actually came here to find you because I wanted to make sure you were okay," he said, quieter now. "You don't have to talk to me, but I needed to say something." A pause. "But you were there," Sam said finally in a quiet voice. "You were in the gang that chased after me last week." Callum's expression shifted. Not defensive, something closer to regret. "No," he said carefully. "We weren't chasing you. Only Ryan was. That angry kid." Sam's ears twitched. "He gets like that," Callum explained. "With everyone. He's a loose cannon with that temper of his, always losing it. We spent half our time trying to stop him doing something stupid." He rubbed the back of his neck. "When you ran, he went after you. Not because of anything you did, just because that's how he gets when he loses it. The rest of us were trying to catch up to him, to stop him." Sam stared at the ground, trying to match that with what he remembered, the pounding footsteps, the noise, the wall of bodies behind him. "I thought you were all coming after me," he said, his voice still quiet, but certain. "I really thought you were going to hurt me." The certainty in Sam's voice filled Callum with guilt. It hadn't occurred to him, not until that moment, that Sam had never considered there might be another explanation. "No," he said immediately. "None of us were. You were never in trouble with us." Sam shook his head faintly. "It really looked like you were. It was terrifying." Callum went still. He suddenly pictured it properly for the first time, not from where he'd been running, tall, fast, surrounded by teammates, but from Sam's perspective. Sam barely came up to his shoulder, narrow frame, light enough that a strong gust could have knocked him over. A kid who always moved so carefully, so cautiously, 16 years old, but built like someone younger, slight, anxious, always flinching at loud noises. And behind him, not one jock running, but many, older, bigger, broad shoulders, and heavy footsteps, bodies trained to take up space, move fast, hit hard, filling the road as they ran. From that perspective, misunderstanding didn't have a chance to surface. This was a small, fragile, frightened kid being chased by a wall of muscle. No room for misinterpretation. The equivalent of a baby deer being chased by a pack of wolves. Of course it had been terrifying. The realization hit Callum all at once, and it was deeply uncomfortable. He had just seen it as noise and motion as they chased after Ryan, but Sam had seen it as mortal danger. Callum rubbed the back of his neck, again in obvious awkwardness. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I get it now." He hesitated, then added, "If I'd realized sooner what it looked like from your perspective, I would have shouted, tried to let you know. I should have. I'm sorry." He hadn't expected one. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "I'm really relieved you told me. Thank you." Callum nodded. "I'm Callum. Sam." Callum watched him for a moment longer. Sam's shoulders were still tight, his body held at a careful distance, still looking as if he was ready to run if he needed to. Callum understood then, with uncomfortable clarity, that Sam was still clearly afraid of him. This realization, of a Neko fearing him, had struck at something deep in his core. It forced him to see himself in a way that not only shocked him, but made him hate what he saw. Callum didn't want to be someone Sam feared. He didn't want to become another jock who made a Neko feel unsafe just by being near them. That's not who he was, or had any desire to be. Standing there, Callum made a decision, one that required no hesitation. If Sam was afraid of him, Callum was going to do whatever it took to change that. He wanted to give Sam a reason to feel safe around him, something solid, something real. For a moment, he searched for what that might be. An olive branch, a means to reach out, to offer something that would break the anonymity and calm the fear in these anxious eyes that were regarding him. Something that would stop Callum from being just another generic jock, another potential threat that Sam didn't know how to read. He suddenly thought of Sam's current predicament, of the video, of the lie being passed around about Sam, of how wrong it was. Callum hesitated, then made himself speak again. "You should know, Sam," Callum said more carefully now. "Not everyone believes that video." Sam hesitated, then spoke quietly. "It's not what people think it is. I didn't do what they're saying." "I know," Callum said without hesitation. "I figured that the moment I saw it." Sam looked up, surprised. "You did?" Callum nodded. "Yeah, I know your kind well. Got Neko in my family, grew up around them." He hesitated just for a moment. "I've known Neko my whole life," he said quietly. "Really known them." His voice softened. "They're just not like that. I've never known one to act that way. Not once. Not even close. It's just not in their nature. Not in yours." He shook his head. "What they're saying about you, it doesn't fit. It's wrong. And let's just say, I know the person who posted it. She isn't always upfront with the truth." Something in Sam's chest eased. Not relief exactly, but a loosening of the tight knot he'd been carrying since Thursday. Callum shifted his weight, awkward now. "Anyway, I came to find you because after what happened last week, I figured you'd be worried that Ryan was still on the warpath." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Ryan had totally lost his temper that day. But it wasn't about you. It never was. He was already wound up over something else. And you just happened to be there when it all tipped over." Afterward, once things cooled down a bit, he didn't say much. Just brushed it off. Made a couple of comments like it had all got out of hand. We gave him some grief for it, especially on how he'd chosen someone much smaller and younger than him to take it out on. He shrugged. "So if you're worried he's still actively looking for you, he's not. He's moved on. If you ran into him again, he'd probably ignore you. Or just say something stupid and keep walking." Callum met Sam's eyes briefly. "So you can relax. He's not coming after you." Sam hesitated, then spoke quietly. "Thank you," he said, "for telling me. It really means a lot." Callum shrugged. "Just figured someone should let you know the full picture." He nodded once and turned to leave. "See you around, Sam." Sam watched him go. He was still feeling a little shaken, still wary, but something had changed. Callum hadn't dismissed him, hadn't judged him, had actually been kind to him when Sam had expected the opposite. For the first time since Thursday, Sam thought that maybe this was someone he didn't need to be afraid of, after all. Sam stayed where he was for a moment, after Callum had left. Before he could move, he heard the faint sound of a phone ringing somewhere in the distance. The sound cut through the quiet and pulled his thoughts straight back to his current predicament, to the video, to the looks, to the gossip, to the phone cameras that had been pointing at him all day. Part of him wanted to abandon the rest of the day and go home, just leave. But he knew he couldn't. He drew a breath, gathered what courage he could, and pulled his shoulders in before starting back toward his next lesson, hoping he could make it through what was left of the day. The end-of-day bells sent people flooding out of the building, loud and careless. Sam waited until most of them had gone. When he finally stood, he kept his head down and took the long way out, skirting the edge of the grounds. Even then, he felt eyes on him. Another phone lifted and lowered again. Someone whispered his name like it was something dirty. He didn't run. He walked all the way home, ears flattened, counting his steps, replaying Callum's words over and over like a small anchor he could hold on to. By the time he reached his street, the houses thinned and the noise fell away. He felt wrung out, but the tension had eased enough for him to breathe again. Nia wasn't home yet. Sam made himself a cup of tea he barely drank. He sat at the kitchen table with his hands wrapped around the mug, staring at the wood grain, letting the quiet settle. Whatever was happening out there, whatever people thought they'd seen, he didn't have the strength to face it tonight. He went to bed early, curling in on himself beneath the covers, like he always did when the world felt too much. Outside his room, somewhere far beyond the walls of the house, the video kept playing. Being shared, being commented on, being believed. Sam closed his eyes, wishing that when he woke up, this day would turn out to be nothing more than just a bad dream. He had no idea how far the video had already gone. Influence, Chapter 7, The Pile-On. By Monday afternoon, it was no longer contained. Mia had seen the video before Sam got home from school. A colleague had shown her in the staff room, phone held low between them, voice hushed but urgent. The clip played once, then again. Silent. Cropped. The woman's distress was clear. Sam's arms were out, blocking her path. The misleading captions sat beneath it like a verdict. Mia felt the room tilt. She reached for the back of a chair, steadying herself without sitting down. She watched the clip again, this time forcing herself to see it the way a stranger would. The missing sound. The way the frame had been cropped tight. How easily the moment could be misread by anyone who didn't understand the context. She'd seen how quickly people decided what a neko was. And she understood, with a cold, sinking clarity, exactly what was being suggested and why it was spreading. She straightened, conscious of her face, her posture, the badge clipped to her uniform. She was still at work, but something cold settled behind her ribs. This wasn't about what Sam had done. This was about manipulating what people would think he had done. And how little space there was, once a story like this took hold, for the truth to catch up. She thanked her colleague, asked carefully who else had seen it, how far it had already spread. The answers weren't reassuring. Walking home, she felt the weight of it settle properly for the first time. She didn't tell Sam she'd seen it. She knew it would only make him worry more. She arrived home, showered and changed, then realized they were out of a few supplies. Mia grabbed her coat and keys. "I'm just going to the store," she called to Sam, who was sat in the lounge, too distracted to read the book he'd been staring at for the past 10 minutes. "I'll join you," Sam replied. She hesitated. "It's all right, you don't have to. I know you're busy," she said carefully. "It's okay." He was already reaching for his jacket. "I want to." She didn't argue. Inside the shop, Sam felt it before he saw it. Two women by the fridge section stopped talking mid-sentence. Stared openly now, eyes narrowing with recognition rather than curiosity. One woman's gaze focused on his ears, then back to his face. Sam's stomach tightened. He kept walking. Mia was in the bakery next door, getting bread, while Sam was getting milk and a few other items from the small store. At the till, the man behind him leaned in closer than necessary. "You know," he said, voice low but pitched to carry, "you should be ashamed of yourself." Sam turned, startled. "I'm sorry?" The man scoffed. "Don't play dumb. I saw what you did, harassing that poor woman." The cashier suddenly found the register screen fascinating. He paid quickly and left without another word. Later, walking to the pharmacy, Mia stayed half a step closer than usual. At the bus stop, a man glanced from his phone to Sam and back again. "Oi," he said. "That him?" Another voice answered. "Yeah, that's him." Mia heard everything. "Just keep walking, Sam," she murmured. They did. They weren't followed. But when Mia closed and locked the door behind them at home, the sound was sharp enough to make Sam flinch. She rested her forehead against the wood for a moment, eyes closed. Sam watched her, the unease settling deeper now. The lie hadn't just escaped the screen. It had found them. Mia straightened slowly and turned to him. "Sam, I know about the video," she said before he could speak. Sam swallowed. "Mom?" She lifted a hand, gentle but firm. "Listen to me." She waited until his eyes were on her. "People are talking because they think they understand something they don't," she said. "That doesn't make them right. The video is a lie. It twists what really happened." He nodded, shoulders still tight. "For now," she went on, "it's probably best not to engage. You don't need to explain yourself to strangers. You've done absolutely nothing wrong, so don't give it your energy. Don't give it more air than it already has." She reached out and smoothed the front of his jacket, the familiar grounding gesture she'd done all his life. "I might not know much about the internet, but I think these things usually burn themselves out quickly," she said. "Especially when you don't feed them." Sam nodded again, relief slipping in now that she'd said it out loud. "Thanks, Mom," he said. "I think you're right." She studied his face for a moment. "Just try not to carry it all on your own, okay?" He let out a breath. "Okay," he said quietly. She pulled him into a hug and didn't let go straight away, aware of how tightly he carried things when he was worried. "Good," she said. "Now let's get that kettle on." Callum hadn't slept much. He'd gone over it again and again in his head, long after the house was quiet. He kept seeing the way Sam had folded in on himself behind the gym, the way he'd flinched down, the way his voice had trembled when he said he thought they were all chasing him. Callum hadn't known until then how much damage that moment had done, or how much of it he'd been part of. It bothered him a lot more than it should have, in a way he couldn't shake. And now, the way people were circling him, sensing weakness, like blood in water. Callum had grown up around Neko, not as curiosities, not as symbols, but as people who cared too much, who took blame too easily, who got hurt because hardening themselves wasn't in their nature. Sweet, caring people who had looked out for him when he was younger, when things at home had been rough. Sam also fitted that shape too well. By morning, the decision felt simple. He wasn't going to stand by and watch it happen. The next day, in the yard, a couple of older boys had Sam cornered, phones out, voices pitched just loud enough to draw attention. Sam's shoulders were hunched, his gaze skittering, ears pressed flat, as if he could make himself smaller by force of will. Callum felt something tighten in his chest when he saw Sam cornered. That same fear, the same helplessness from Thursday, but sharper now. He wasn't going to stand by this time. Not again. He didn't hesitate. He crossed the space in brisk strides and stepped between them. "That's enough," he said. Calm, unmovable. "Get lost." One of the boys scoffed. "What, you his bodyguard now?" Callum didn't rise to it. He just met the boy's eyes. "Walk away," he said, firmly. There was a pause. Then the boys backed off, muttering as they went. Callum turned to Sam. "You okay?" Sam nodded automatically. His hands were shaking. Callum noticed. He didn't say anything about it, but the sight of it hit him harder than he expected. "I'm going to stick around," Callum said, not asking, just stating it. "If that's all right?" Sam blinked. "You don't have to. I don't want you getting dragged into this." "I know," Callum said, still staying. He fell into step beside Sam as they started walking, matching his pace without thinking about it. "I've got Nekos in my family," Callum added after a moment. "They looked after me when I was younger." A pause. "I recognize this." Sam glanced at him, properly this time. "But why?" he asked. Quiet. Open. "Why are you doing this?" Callum didn't overthink it. "Because you shouldn't be dealing with it alone." That was all. He didn't say the rest, that he'd seen too many Neko carry fear alone, and he wasn't going to let Sam become another one. They walked the rest of the yard together. Sam didn't speak for a bit. When he did, his voice was careful. "Thank you." Callum nodded. "Come on," he said. "We'll be late." Sam fell into step beside him as they walked toward the building. That morning break, Madison stood near the steps, exactly where she always stood, sunlight catching her hair just right. Her phone rested in her hand, angled low as she scrolled. Every so often someone stopped to speak to her, a laugh, a hand on her arm, a quick look at the screen. She looked pleased, not giddy, not excited, satisfied. Her friend Lena stood beside her, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. She was looking at her phone. 90,000 views, she said quietly, once the others had drifted away. It's going viral. Madison didn't look up. That's how these things work. I know, but, Lena hesitated, you really cut a lot out. Madison glanced at her then, one eyebrow lifting. I cut what didn't matter. That's not what it looks like, Lena said. You took out the road, the hospital staff. You took out why he was there. People don't want explanations. They just want to be shocked and know who's in the wrong. Lena's mouth tightened. You made it look like he was hurting her. Madison's smile thinned. I showed what I saw. Yeah, Lena said quietly, keeping her tone light, careful not to let it turn into a confrontation. That's not entirely true though, is it? Madison's gaze hardened. I saw enough. Walking beside Callum had changed things. Sam felt it almost immediately, even before he could name it. The looks didn't stop. Phones were still raised, whispers still followed them down the corridor, like insects. But the way people moved around them shifted. Voices dropped instead of rising. A few students who might have stepped closer before now veered away, pretending they had somewhere else to be. Callum's presence drew a line people didn't want to cross. Sam stayed close without meaning to. Not pressed against him, not hiding, just within reach. His shoulders were still tight, his ears still dipped low, but the constant sense of being hunted eased enough for him to breathe properly. For the first time all day, his body wasn't screaming at him to run. Callum noticed. The way Sam's steps matched his. The way his eyes didn't dart quite as wildly. And it made something settle inside him. They turned into the main corridor when the jocks came into view, grouped near the lockers. Ryan was there, leaning back with his arms folded, jaw locked like it always was when he was spoiling for a fight. A couple of the others stood nearby, watching Sam openly now, animosity in their demeanor. Sam slowed without realizing it. Callum stopped outright, placing himself between the group and Sam as he came to a halt beside him, ears flattening against his head. The group fell quiet. Callum didn't raise his voice when he spoke. He didn't need to. Leave him be, guys, he said. That video's a total lie. One of them shrugged. Looks bad, though. That's because it's been edited to look that way, Callum said. It shows something that didn't happen, at least not how it's being presented. Ryan snorted. So now you're defending him? I'm telling the truth, Callum said. He didn't do what she's claiming. Sam stared at the floor, heat crawling up his neck. Every instinct in him wanted to disappear, to fold in on himself. Somehow, his feet stayed where they were. One of the jocks shifted, uneasy. Well, Madison does exaggerate. We all know she's pulled stuff like this before. And honestly, the kid doesn't really seem like a creep. Hasn't got that vibe. Ryan pushed himself upright. Or maybe the freak really is a creep, he said, and he just showed his true colors. His eyes locked onto Callum. And now you're defending him. Callum turned fully then. His voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath it. You don't know what you're talking about. That's not what's happening. Ryan laughed, sharp and ugly. Figured you'd take his side. You always pick the strays. The words landed harder than Ryan knew. Because this wasn't about strays. It was about people who deserved better than the way the world treated them. This isn't me picking sides, Callum replied. It's me recognizing when something doesn't add up, and not swallowing the bullshit just because everyone else is. Silence stretched between them. Ryan's eyes flicked to Sam, cold and measuring. This isn't finished, you creepy little freak, he muttered, before turning away. The group followed, some reluctantly. A few glanced back at Callum as they went, not in agreement, but in recognition, like they knew who set the line, even if they didn't like it. Sam let out a shaky breath. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. I know, Callum replied, but I chose to. And he realized, with a strange clarity, that he meant it more than he'd expected. The rest of the day moved differently. People still stared, still whispered, but no one approached Sam while Callum was with him. The crowd's confidence thinned when they realized someone, a jock no less, was willing to stand beside him openly. Whatever else Callum was, he wasn't someone they were eager to test. Sam noticed the change, even if he didn't fully understand it. The way people looked, then looked away. The way space opened where it hadn't before. At the school gates, Sam slowed. "You're going to get grief for this," he said. "Because of me." Callum shook his head. "If telling the truth causes trouble, that's not on you." Sam hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you," he said, "for helping me." Callum answered with a small nod of his own. They parted at the corner as Sam headed for home. Callum hadn't gone far when his phone buzzed. A message from Lena, Madison's friend. "Can we talk?" "Now." He stopped walking and typed back, "Yes, I'm free." The reply came instantly. "I should have said something sooner. I didn't like what she did." Callum stared at the screen, the weight of it settling on him. "Where? Anywhere. I'll come to you." He locked the phone and tried to imagine the conversation ahead. There were a lot of ways it could go. None of them seemed simple. Influence. Chapter 8. Silence and Proximity. Callum met her at a small cafe just off the high street. It was the kind of place people chose when they wanted a conversation to stay contained. Neutral. Forgettable. He barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sam flinching behind the gym, shoulders folding in like he expected to be hit. Or the way Sam had shaken in the yard, trying to pretend he wasn't. Or the way he'd whispered, "I thought you were all chasing me." Those images had followed him here. Lena arrived a few minutes late, spotted him immediately, and came straight over. "I don't want to dance around this," she said as she sat down, pulling out her phone. "So I'm just going to say it and show you." Callum nodded, though something in his stomach tightened. He wasn't sure he wanted to see whatever this was. She took a breath and turned the phone toward him. Madison's video. It was filmed at the hospital. The woman in it was trying to kill herself. The words hit him like a cold drop of water. He didn't speak. He just watched. Lena spoke as the footage ran. "I was there with Madison. We both filmed the whole thing." The woman ran out of the hospital toward the main road. 3 lanes, fast traffic. Sam ran after her. He reached her before anyone else and stood in her way. Callum's jaw tightened. He could already picture Sam, terrified, shaking, but refusing to move. He'd seen that look before. He'd seen what fear did to him. "You can see she's screaming at him," Lena said. "Hitting him, trying to get past him. He's shaking, terrified, but he doesn't move. He stays there until nurses run over from the hospital and sedate her." Callum swallowed hard. Sam had been inches from traffic, alone, terrified, and still he'd stayed. Her jaw tightened. "I filmed Madison filming it. I was further back. You can see the road. You can hear the traffic. You can see the staff running." The picture settled into place for Callum, sharp and unavoidable. Sam hadn't just been misrepresented. He'd been rewritten. "What Madison posted," Lena went on, "is a carefully cropped edit. No sound, no road, no context. Just the moment where he's standing in front of her, looking like he's harassing her." Callum leaned back slightly, breath leaving him in a slow exhale. A cold anger settled under his ribs. Not loud, not explosive. The kind that sharpened everything. "She knew what was happening?" he asked. "Yes," Lena said. No hesitation. She knew exactly. There was a pause. "She wanted it to look like he was threatening her," Lena added, "or harassing her, something spicy, something people would react to." Callum looked down at the table. He felt sick. Sam had been terrified, doing the bravest thing he'd ever done, and Madison had turned it into something ugly, something that stripped the truth out of him and left only the worst interpretation behind. "Why tell me?" Lena exhaled. "Because it's wrong, and because I can't pretend I didn't see what really happened anymore." She hesitated, then added, "And because you're the only person I've seen actually stand beside him." That stayed with him, more than he expected. It made him realize just how alone Sam was in the places that mattered. When they stood to leave, she stopped him. "I saw someone threaten him yesterday," she said. "Not online, in person." Callum turned back fully, something cold sliding through him. "They were shouting at him in the street, right in his face," she went on. "He didn't argue. He just froze. He was terrified. It was awful." Callum felt something twist sharply at his chest. He could picture it too easily, Sam shrinking in on himself, ears flat, too scared to move. He'd seen that posture before. He hated that he recognized it. "And I know he's innocent. I know he didn't do what Madison's claiming. That's what scares me. People think they're justified." Callum's jaw tightened. He hadn't meant to speak, but the words came out anyway. He's not coping, he said. He's anxious all the time. He's not sleeping. Every look, every laugh, he thinks it's about him. This isn't just gossip to him. It's eating him alive. He met her eyes. You've got to talk to Madison. Get her to call it off. And Lena, you need to do it today. Lena hesitated. I don't know if she'll listen. You really have to try, Callum said. His voice was steady, but something underneath it was fraying. And quickly, before this turns into something worse. He didn't know what worse meant yet. Influence. Chapter 9. Escalation. By Thursday, Sam had learned to count time in glances. Every corridor crossing. Every open space. Every moment when the noise dipped and he became visible again. Callum stayed close when he could. Between classes, at lunch, sometimes just standing nearby, pretending to scroll on his phone. It helped. The looks did not stop, but they slid away faster. Voices dropped when he passed. Ryan did not. Ryan watched. Sam felt it the moment he saw him. His ears pressed flat before his mind could form a reason. Ryan never spoke directly. That was almost worse. He leaned against walls, smiled without humor, let his gaze linger just long enough to feel deliberate. By afternoon break, Sam was exhausted. He didn't go to the main yard. He rarely did. Too open, too many angles. Instead, he slipped behind the gym again, to the strip of concrete and grass that sat half hidden from the rest of the school. A place people passed through, but did not stay long. It usually felt safer. Today, it felt exposed. He sat on the low wall with his back against the brickwork, shoulders drawn in, lunch untouched in his bag. His hands trembled faintly, no matter how hard he tried to still them. Footsteps sounded nearby. Sam's head snapped up. Ryan stepped into view, flanked by two others. Not the whole group, only the ones who hadn't refused. Sam stood immediately, heart slamming against his ribs. Relax, Ryan said. We just want to talk. Sam shook his head. Please, I haven't done anything. One of the others snorted. Yeah, that's what they all say. Sam took a step back. His heel clipped the wall behind him. Ryan moved closer. You think you can hide back here? He said. Think standing next to Callum makes you untouchable? Sam's breath came fast now. His ears were flat against his head, tail tight to his leg. I didn't lie, he said. I tried to help her. Ryan shoved him. Sam hit the wall hard. Air burst from his lungs. Pain flared across his shoulder. That's not what people think, Ryan growled. And that's what matters. Another shove, harder this time. Sam lost his footing. He went down hard. His head struck the corner of the low wall with a sharp, sickening crack. For a moment there was no pain at all. Then warmth flooded his face. Blood. A lot of it. It ran into his eyes, soaked into his collar, splattered the concrete beneath him. One of the jocks swore. Jesus. Ryan froze. Sam tried to sit up and failed. The world tilted violently. He tasted iron. Oh shit, someone gasped. Ryan, that's bad. Ryan stared at the blood, color draining from his face. I didn't mean. Footsteps, voices. Move, one of them hissed. We have to go. They bolted. Sam was left slumped against the wall, blood pooling beneath him, vision narrowing. He was dimly aware of someone shouting his name. Then arms around him. Sam, Sam, no, no, no. Callum. Callum dropped to his knees, hands shaking as he grabbed Sam's shoulders. Sam, Sam, you okay? His palms came away bright red. A cold, hollow shock spread through him, sharp and immediate. Sam, can you hear me? Sam's eyes fluttered, his focus fading. Callum felt panic rise in his chest. Sam's head lolled slightly, and that tiny movement was enough to tell him this was more serious than just a flesh wound to the head. Sam was fading. Stay with me, Callum gasped, in a panicked plea. The words came out raw, pulsed straight from fear rather than thought. Please, Sam, stay with me. The blood never stopped pouring down the side of Sam's face, warm and fast. Callum pressed his hand against the wound, desperately trying to stem the bleeding, his fingers slipping, as more blood welled up beneath them. His other hand steadied Sam's head as gently as he could manage. "Help!" he shouted, voice cracking. "Someone get help!" Sam's eyes drifted. Callum leaned closer, trying to keep him present. "I am here," he said. "I am right here. You're gonna be all right, Sam. Just hold on." Teachers came running. Someone else screamed for an ambulance. Callum did not let go. Even when they tried to pull him back, he stayed crouched beside Sam, one hand gripping his sleeve, the other braced against his shoulder, whispering reassurances he barely heard himself say. By the time the paramedics arrived, Sam was barely conscious. Callum climbed into the ambulance without thinking. He was covered in blood. The school nurse followed, speaking quietly to the paramedics, but Callum barely noticed or heard her. He sat beside the stretcher, holding Sam's hand, his own hands shaking uncontrollably. The ambulance ride blurred into noise and movement. Callum sat pressed against the side bench, knees drawn in, one hand clenched around Sam's, the other hovering near his shoulder, afraid to touch anywhere that might hurt him more. Blood kept seeping through the bandages. Every time he thought it had slowed, there was more. "Stay with us, Sam," one of the paramedics said, calm but firm. "You're doing really well. Just keep your eyes open. Don't go to sleep, okay?" Sam tried. His eyes kept fluttering, unfocused. His breathing was shallow and uneven. When Callum spoke his name, his fingers twitched faintly in response. The paramedic noticed Callum's shaking hands. "Keep talking to him," he said gently. "It really helps." Callum swallowed and nodded. He leaned closer. "I'm right here, Sam," he said quietly. "You're gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be all right. Just gotta stay awake, okay?" The siren cut off as they reached the hospital. Everything happened at once. Doors opened. Hands replaced his. Sam was lifted away, wheeled through double doors, voices overlapping in practiced urgency. Callum stumbled after them, heart pounding, his clothes soaked through with blood. A nurse caught sight of him as he passed. "Where are you hurt?" she asked, looking deeply concerned, already holding his arm. "No, it's not my blood," Callum gasped, barely stopping. "It's Sam's." He pointed toward Sam. She hesitated for half a second, then nodded, understanding. She let him go, turning back to help the team rushing Sam inside. "Family?" another nurse asked. Callum blinked, still in a daze. His mom. She works here, I think. Sam volunteers here too." The nurse's gaze flicked to the cat ears still matted with blood. Recognition hit her like a jolt. "Wait, Sam? Sam Carter?" she suddenly asked, sounding urgent. Callum nodded. "Oh my God," she gasped. "Sam's one of ours." And just like that, the tone shifted. A ripple of urgency moved through the staff. Someone was already reaching for a phone. Someone else was saying, "Find Mia, now." Callum could only stand there, hands still shaking, as Sam was taken through the doors into one of the emergency bays. He didn't follow. He stopped just outside, near the glass that looked into the treatment room, watching as nurses moved in around Sam. Mia appeared minutes later, in her blue scrubs, breathless from running. Someone had paged her the moment Sam's name was spoken. She saw Sam through the glass, and in her anguish, made a sound Callum would never forget. She went straight to the window, hands braced against it, whispering her son's name under her breath. Two nurses were at her side immediately, colleagues, not just staff, reaching for her arms, grounding her, murmuring her name. One of them kept saying, "Mia, we've got him. We've got him." The nurses stayed close, steadying her, guiding her through the shock. A few moments later, they led her inside. Callum stood back in the corridor as medical staff worked, watching through the glass, as Mia held Sam's hand, speaking softly to him. He appeared to be drifting in and out of consciousness. A doctor came out a short while later and briefly explained head trauma, bleeding, concussion. Serious, but caught in time. "He is lucky," the doctor said. "He is very lucky." Callum felt a flicker of relief, but it was slow and incomplete, leaving him hollow. By the time Sam was settled, monitored, breathing steadily, Callum finally stepped away from the glass. He remained in the corridor, hands still trembling, reality catching up all at once. Mia came to him quietly a few minutes later. He noticed her before she reached him. She looked smaller than she had earlier. Not just petite, but diminished by fear. Her ears were low, angled down against her head, in the same way Sam's were, whenever he was overwhelmed. Her tail held close to her leg, as if she were trying to take up less space. Her eyes were red and glassy. She had been crying, trying to stop, failing. One hand kept brushing at her sleeve, a nervous, self-soothing motion that never quite settled. Seeing Sam hurt had shaken Callum, but seeing his mother like this did something worse. This was Sam's world. This was who he went home to. Gentle, open, unarmored. She stopped in front of him, took a breath that did not quite steady her, and looked up at his face. In that moment, Callum understood something clearly. What had been done to Sam did not stop with Sam. It rippled outward, into this quiet woman with the same ears, tail, the same gentleness, the same visible innocence that made you want to shield her from anything sharp. Watching Mia break like that, seeing what someone had done to her son, knowing someone had made her run into this corridor, carrying that kind of terror, made something inside Callum tighten until it hurt. He decided, with a clarity that scared him, that whoever did this was not getting away with it. She didn't speak at first. She looked at his face, then at his hands, the blood dark and drying now. "You're Callum," she said. Her voice was soft, unsteady at the edges, but she held herself together. He nodded. "Sam's told me about you," she went on, "more than once." A pause. That doesn't happen very often. Something in her voice made his throat tighten. "He doesn't make friends easily," she said, "so when he does, it matters so much to me." Callum swallowed. She reached out then, not hurried, and took his hands. She did not flinch at the blood. "Thank you," she said, "for not leaving him, for being there when Sam was so frightened." Callum tried to answer, but nothing came. Her gentleness, her quiet courage, the way she was breaking inside and still trying to stand, was almost unbearable to look at. The heartbreak of it hit him like a blow. It felt wrong, almost cruel, that someone like her had been dragged into this kind of situation. Then back at him. "Would you like to come in?" she asked. "Just for a moment." He hesitated. "I don't want to be in the way." "You won't be," she said softly. "He would want you there." The room was quieter now. Machines humming softly. Sam lay still on the bed, pale beneath the bandages, unconscious, his breathing slow and even. Mia went to one side of the bed and took Sam's hand. She stood there for a moment, watching him, her thumb moving gently against his skin. Callum hovered at the foot of the bed, unsure where to put himself. Then he stepped closer, careful. Without quite deciding to, he reached out and took Sam's other hand. It was warm. Callum held on, watching Sam's chest rise and fall, anchoring himself to that simple rhythm. His vision blurred before he realized why. The room was calm now, too calm, and the adrenaline that had been carrying him was ebbing fast, leaving him shaky and hollow in its wake. What was left behind was raw and shaking and unbearably human. He blinked hard, jaw tightening, but the tears came anyway, silent, unchecked, sliding down his face and dripping onto his blood-stained clothes. Mia noticed. She looked up from Sam's face and saw it immediately. Without saying a word, she stepped around the bed and came to Callum's side. She was small beside him, trembling slightly herself, but she did not hesitate. She wrapped her arms around him, gentle but sure. Callum bowed his head, breath unsteady, as something inside him finally gave way. He found himself holding on to her without thinking, not tightly, just a small, instinctive reach for comfort he realized he needed as much as she did. After that long healing hug, Mia released him quietly and returned to Sam's side. Callum stood there, hands still holding Sam's, knowing with absolute clarity that he could not walk away from this. Not now. Not ever. Influence. Chapter 10. The Confrontation. Callum left the hospital an hour later, but he didn't go home. Sam's blood was still on him, on his clothes, dried now, darker where it had soaked into the fabric of his light gray hoodie. It looked bad, bad enough that anyone who saw him would have thought something terrible had happened. They wouldn't have been wrong. He went to her house, Madison's. It was the kind of place that sat back from the road, gates open but unnecessary. Everything quiet and orderly in a way that suggested nothing bad was meant to reach it. Callum rang the bell and waited, aware of how he must look standing there with the dried blood on him. Madison answered the door herself. One of her friends hovered a few steps back in the hallway, phone in hand, pretending not to watch. Her smile appeared automatically, then vanished. "Callum, oh my God," she said, eyes dropping to his blood-stained hands and hoodie. "What happened to you?" For a moment, her concern seemed real. "Are you hurt?" Callum shook his head. "It's not my blood." She frowned. "Then whose is it?" "It's Sam's." That was when her expression shifted. Not fear, not guilt, annoyance. "What do you mean, Sam's?" she said. "Why would you—" "He was attacked," Callum said. His voice was flat now, controlled. "At school, during break. They cornered him behind the gym." Madison's mouth tightened. "That's not—" "They cracked his head on a wall," Callum went on. "There was blood everywhere. He almost died." Madison crossed her arms. "That has nothing to do with me." Callum took a step closer. "It has everything to do with you." Her eyes flashed. "I didn't tell anyone to hurt him." "No," Callum said. "You just told everyone he was dangerous." She scoffed. "I posted a video." "You posted a lie," he said. "And you know it. Come on, Madison. He's nothing like what you've made him out to be." Madison shook her head. "I showed what I saw." "You showed what fitted your caption," Callum said. "You stripped out anything that might have made people stop and question it." Her gaze flicked away, then back, defensive now. "You don't know that." "I do," Callum said, "because someone who was there told me exactly what happened, from the start, not the version you posted." Madison's mouth tightened. "And I need you to understand what that did." She didn't interrupt. "I was there when they found him," he said, "after your video went viral. After people started treating him like a monster instead of the gentle, innocent kid that he is." His hands curled slowly at his sides as the anger inside him climbed. "Do you know what that feels like?" Callum snarled. "Holding someone you care about, thinking they're about to die in your arms?" Madison didn't answer. "It's unbearable," he went on, "like it's tearing you apart while you're still kneeling there, panicking, begging, praying." "I didn't know what that felt like until today," he said. "And I wish I didn't. I wish to God you hadn't made that experience part of my life." The words sat between them, heavy. "They smashed his head when they attacked him. There was blood everywhere. I was on my knees in the dirt, cradling his head, trying to stop him from bleeding out. My hands kept slipping. I couldn't make it stop." His breathing was uneven now. "I was begging him to stay awake, crying, because I thought he was going to die before the paramedics got there." He looked straight at her. "And all because you put that goddamn lie of a video online, for clicks, for profit." Madison shifted, discomfort flashing across her face. "I stood in the hospital corridor afterward," Callum continued, "covered in Sam's blood, waiting with his mom, watching her fall apart because she thought she was going to lose her only son. This is what your stupid post did," he said. "This is where it led." For a moment she didn't speak. Then she laughed. Short, tight, like she was trying to shake something off. "You're blowing this way out of proportion," she said. Callum stared at her. Something in him snapped. "After all that, you're actually laughing?" he said. "What the hell's wrong with you? Do you hear yourself?" Callum looked down at himself, then back at her. "You see this?" he said. "This isn't fake. This is real blood, Sam's blood." His voice dropped, rough now. "He's just a kid," he said. "He's gentle. He scares easily. He doesn't fight back. He doesn't even know how." His voice thickened, despite him trying to keep it steady. "And now he's unconscious in hospital, with tubes and monitors hooked to him, because people thought they were justified in attacking him, because you told them he was a monster." She rolled her eyes. "You're acting like I put him there myself." "You didn't pull the trigger, Madison," Callum said, "but you made damn sure someone else would." He stepped closer. "I'm asking you," he said, "please, just do the right thing. Post a retraction, take the post down, say you were wrong, say it wasn't what it looked like. You don't even have to explain everything. Just make it stop." Madison's expression hardened completely. "No," she said flatly, "I'm not ruining myself for him." Something in Callum went still. The guys who did this, he added quietly, their lives are finished. He didn't raise his voice. Sam's life will never be the same. Neither will mine. He looked at her. And you're worried about your image? What is wrong with you, Madison? Madison didn't answer. Callum let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He dragged a blood-stained hand down his face, slow and tired, the movement heavy with disbelief. For a second, it looked like he might say something else, but he didn't. He realized then that she felt none of it. Not the fear, not the damage, not the blood he was still wearing. Whatever she was feeding on, it wasn't human. He shook his head once, a small, helpless gesture that said everything he couldn't put into words. And he turned, walking away from her. Madison didn't watch Callum leave. The moment he turned to walk away, her attention was already back on her phone. She scrolled. Notifications stacked faster than she could open them. Comments, shares, messages she hadn't replied to yet. Sympathy, praise, outrage on her behalf. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself. "This is fine," she muttered. Her friend, who'd been standing nearby and watching everything, glanced at her. "Everything all right?" "Yeah," Madison said quickly. "Just people being idiots." She stood, pacing a few steps, thumb hovering over her screen. The blood on Callum's shirt replayed in her head, unwanted. The way he'd looked at her when he said Sam's name. She shook it off. This wasn't on her. Still, her fingers moved. A name came up. The girl who'd been with her that day. Lena. The one who'd filmed from further back. Madison hesitated only a second before pressing call. It rang twice. "Hey," Lena answered. "What's up?" Madison lowered her voice, turning slightly away from the other girl. "I need you to do me a favor." There was a pause. "What kind of favor?" "That video you took," Madison said, "the longer one at the hospital. You still have it, right?" "Yes," Lena replied carefully. "Why?" Madison's jaw tightened. "I need you to get rid of it." Silence stretched. "Delete it," Madison repeated. "Now, before it causes problems." Another pause, longer this time. "That footage shows more than your clip," Lena said slowly. "You know that." Madison's tone hardened. "That's exactly why it needs to go." For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I'll call you back," Lena said finally. The line went dead. Madison stared at her phone, irritation creeping under her skin. She didn't notice the unease settling in her chest. Not yet. Influence. Chapter 11. A Conscience Wakes. Lena didn't call Madison back. Her phone lay face down on her desk. Unbeknownst to Madison, she'd already heard what had happened to Sam through her network of friends, and she had been questioning her position in all of this, ever since. Evening light crept in through the blinds, striping the carpet in pale lines. "Delete it," the words echoed, ugly in their simplicity. Lena leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling, jaw tight. She hadn't argued, not properly. She hadn't agreed either, just said she'd call her back, buying time the same way she always had whenever Madison was pushing for something questionable. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Madison, have you done it yet?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for the phone and opened her gallery. The video sat there, unchanged. Longer than Madison's, wider view, full sound. She already knew what it showed. She'd watched it the night it happened, sitting on the edge of her bed, unsettled in a way she hadn't wanted to examine too closely. At the time, she'd told herself it wasn't her place, that Madison would handle it, that getting involved would only make things worse. Now, someone had been nearly killed. She tapped the video and watched it all the way through, with the sound on. The woman running, the shouting behind her, the roar of traffic as the road came into view. Sam, the small cat-eared boy, planting himself between her and the road, arms out, afraid and shaking, but unmoving. A voice yelled from behind. Merce's burst into frame seconds later. No pause, no doubt. He was saving her life. Lena's stomach turned. The phone buzzed again with another text. "Madison, I need that video gone, now." Lena locked the screen and pressed her palms against her eyes. She thought of Callum, of the way he'd looked at the cafe, exhausted and furious in a way she'd never seen before. Of how he'd said Sam's name like it mattered. Callum knew she had the footage. She'd told him, showed him. He hadn't pushed, hadn't demanded it. He'd told her to try to get Madison to take the post down first, to give her a chance to do the right thing. Lena had tried. She'd called. She'd argued. She'd told Madison it was wrong, that the clip was misleading, that someone was going to get hurt. Madison had just laughed and waved it off like it was nothing. That trust sat heavy now. If she deleted the video, she wouldn't just be protecting Madison. She'd be betraying the one person who had trusted her to do the right thing, and erasing the only proof that Sam was innocent. Lena stared at the dark screen of her phone. Madison wasn't going to take it down. She'd never planned to. The realization settled slowly, heavily. There was no version of this where Madison suddenly grew a conscience, no appeal left to make. Lena's thoughts kept circling back to Sam, to the gossip she'd heard, the blood, the ambulance, the way people were still talking about him like he was something dangerous instead of an innocent kid who'd nearly been killed. She pictured him in the emergency room, unconscious, alone, while the lie about him kept spreading. Deleting the video would be easy. One tap. Clean. Safe. She also realized it would be unforgivable. It would erase the only thing that could clear Sam's name and stop this from happening again. She couldn't bring herself to do it. Lena unlocked her phone and opened her messages. Callum's name was already there. She stared at it for a long moment before replying. Madison called me. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. What did she say? She swallowed. She asked me to delete my video. The dots vanished, then reappeared. Did you? No. The silence that followed felt different. Not empty. Waiting. Lena opened the video one last time. She scrubbed through it slowly, forcing herself to watch every second she'd avoided before. Sam putting himself in harm's way, the fear in his eyes, the split-second choices, the rush of people as help arrived, the truth sitting there whole and unmistakable. This is what actually happened, she thought, whether anyone wanted it or not. She selected the file. Her thumb hovered over the send arrow. She knew what this would cost her. Madison, the group, the quiet protection that came from standing on the right side of the wrong people. Once she sent it, there would be no pretending she'd misunderstood. No way to smooth it over. Madison would know. And Madison didn't forgive betrayal. Lena had seen what happened to people who crossed her. The whispers, the sudden exclusions, the way reputations collapsed while everyone else watched and said nothing. Part of her wanted to disappear, to delete the file, shut her phone off, and let this become someone else's problem, to melt back into the background and survive. But she couldn't stop thinking about what had been done to Sam. She didn't really know him. He was just someone she'd seen around school. A Neko kid. Small, slight. The soft furry ears on his head, and the tail he always seemed vaguely aware of, that would sway gently behind him. He'd always seemed so gentle to her. Sweet, even. The kind of presence that made some people soften, without quite realizing why. And now all she could think about was that same boy, unconscious in a hospital bed. Badly hurt, covered in blood, still not out of danger. The contrast made her stomach turn. She couldn't accept that as normal. Couldn't accept it as okay. Not even close. She wasn't letting this continue. She was choosing a side. Lena drew a slow breath. Then she pressed send. The phone vibrated softly as the file transferred. A few seconds later, a message appeared. Callum, I've got it. She let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. I should have done something sooner, she typed. I'm sorry it took this long. The reply came a moment later. You did the right thing. She stared at the words, unsure whether she believed them yet. Influence. Chapter 12. The Truth Released. Callum didn't post the video straight away. He watched it again first. All of it. He watched Sam move, fast and instinctive, placing himself where he didn't belong, when nobody should have been standing, between a person in crisis and a road full of high-speed traffic. He watched it through once, then again. There was no doubt left to entertain. He slowed as he walked along the service path that ran toward the hospital, phone in both hands. The early evening air cool against his skin. Rush hour traffic noise distant but constant. Somewhere ahead of him, behind walls he couldn't see yet, Sam was with his mother, being cared for. The light was already dropping as he walked, the sun low and slanted, stretching long shadows across the path ahead of him. He'd watched the video twice now, once without blinking, then again as he walked more slowly, as if his eyes needed time to catch up with what his mind already knew. The blood on his clothes had dried dark against the fabric, drawing concerned glances from the few people he passed. Sam's actions in the video was all he could think about. The way he'd moved without hesitation. The way he'd put himself in danger because someone else needed help. Watching it again hadn't disturbed him. It had clarified things. There was no version of this where Sam was at fault. No angle, no missing context, no interpretation that made the truth bend. The video didn't ask to be explained. It just needed to be seen. He opened the social media platform Madison had used. Scrolled once. The original clip was still there. Still gaining huge traction. Still being shared with certainty and outrage. Still telling the wrong story. Callum selected the longer video. No caption, no explanation, no tags. Just the footage. He posted it onto the same thread and locked his phone. For a few minutes, nothing happened. But by the time he reached the hospital, the phone was already vibrating in his pocket. Then it buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. He ignored it. He eventually reached the hospital. A nurse passed him in the corridor, and seeing the dried blood, gave him a look that asked if he needed anything. He shook his head. She moved on. The buzzing became constant. He checked his phone. The comments were already shifting. Questions first, then pauses, then silence in places where noise had been. Someone had typed, "That's not what I thought it was." Someone else, "There's traffic. Why didn't we see that before?" Another, "He was stopping her running into traffic." Screenshots of Madison's caption appeared beneath the video, now awkward, exposed by the footage above it. Callum didn't scroll for long. He didn't reply to anything. He put the phone away and went back to his seat. A few minutes later, his phone rang. He let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Then a message. Madison. Callum didn't answer. He sat still, hands clasped loosely in front of him, listening to the distant sounds of the hospital. Somewhere nearby, a trolley rattled. A door closed. Footsteps passed. The truth was out now. It didn't need him anymore. And for the first time since this had all begun, he felt certain of one thing. From here on, the consequences would belong to the truth alone. Influence. Chapter 13. The Turn. At first, people just watched. They watched the longer video once, then again. Some slowed it down, some replayed it with the sound on, flinching at the noise of traffic that hadn't existed in the first clip. Questions appeared almost immediately. Why is there a road right there? Why didn't we hear that before? Why does the original cut off just before the nurses arrive? Someone posted the 2 clips side by side. The difference was undeniable. In the wider frame, the danger was obvious. The road wasn't theoretical. It was 3 lanes of fast-moving traffic. Vehicles tearing past close enough and loud enough to distort the microphone's audio in places. In the video, there was shouting, panic, urgency. A voice yelling for someone to stop her. Another calling for help. And then, there was Sam. Small, shaking, terrified, standing his ground anyway. People began saying it out loud. He was stopping her. He put himself in front of her. He wasn't harassing her, he was saving her life. That was when the tone changed completely. What had once been outrage turned into something sharper, more volatile. Not confusion, not embarrassment. Anger. Screenshots of Madison's captions spread again, now stripped of their authority. Words that had sounded righteous hours earlier looked grotesque alongside the full footage. Harassing, dangerous, shouldn't be allowed. Someone wrote, "So this kid saves a woman from killing herself, and you turn him into a predator?" Another, "You took a heroic act of bravery and made it look like a crime." The reactions multiplied. Faster now, louder. People weren't just correcting the record anymore. They were furious at what had been done to it. Then the news of the attack broke wider. Not speculation this time. Confirmation. Teenage boy hospitalized after assault. Head injury. Condition serious but stable. The pieces snapped together almost instantly. This is the same kid. This happened after the video. This is because of the video. Outrage exploded. It wasn't abstract anymore. It had a body, a hospital bed, a frightened mother sitting beside it. People traced the timeline, laying the posts over the events with brutal clarity. Someone wrote, "You painted a target on an innocent child's back." Another, "You turned a hero into prey." Madison's silence was deafening. She didn't post a clarification, didn't acknowledge the longer footage, didn't address the attack. By evening, her name had trended for a very different reason. Not admiration, accountability. Questions shifted from opinion to consequence. Is this endangerment? Does this count as incitement? Can you be responsible if someone gets hurt because of what you posted? The original clip vanished sometime after dark. No explanation followed. Her account went private shortly after. At school, the atmosphere hardened. Urgently, phones were confiscated without argument. Students were warned about recording, about spreading harm, about responsibility. Assemblies were canceled. Rumors were shut down mid-sentence. Sam's name was never said aloud. It didn't need to be. At the hospital, none of it touched the ward. The lights hummed softly. The machines bleeped. Sam lay still beneath the blankets. A bandage wrapped around his head. His mother asleep upright beside him, her hand resting on his arm, as if afraid to let go. Close by, Callum sat with his phone dark in his pocket. He didn't feel triumph. He didn't feel vindication. Only a deep, steady certainty. The truth hadn't just corrected a lie. It had revealed something far worse, and the world was finally reacting to it. Influence, Chapter 14. Quiet Atonement. The turn did not begin online. It began on the evening news. It opened with Lena's original footage. The clip played through. A woman in visible distress, running toward a busy 3-lane road. Traffic moving at speed. Horns sounding. And a young Necco hospital volunteer stepping into her path, placing himself in danger between her and the cars rushing past. The woman's face had been blurred, but the danger was unmistakable. The presenter's voice came in quietly. "What you're seeing here is the full, unedited footage of a rescue that took place outside Memorial Hospital on Saturday afternoon. This young hero intervening is a hospital volunteer who bravely acted to prevent a woman in crisis from running into live traffic." The footage continued beneath her words. However, this was not how many people first encountered this incident. The screen shifted. A cropped clip appeared beside the original. Madison's edited version. Shorter, tighter. The road removed. The traffic gone. Sound gone. Context completely stripped away. A shortened and heavily edited version of similar footage was posted online days earlier by a popular social media account, where it was presented as something it was not. The young volunteer intervening was portrayed in a way that suggested harassment, rather than an attempt to save a life. The accompanying caption clearly implied the volunteer was dangerous and even predatory. The presenter paused before continuing. Unfortunately, in the days that followed, the young volunteer was attacked and seriously injured. He is currently being treated in the same hospital. Police have confirmed the incident is under investigation and have not ruled out a connection between the attack and the misleading social media post. The footage faded out. This case has prompted renewed discussion about the dangers of misrepresentation online and the real-world harm that can follow when context is removed. Our network will be examining those risks in a special report later this week. By the time the segment ended, the silence in living rooms across the country was heavy. Phones lit up moments later. The full video spread again, this time with context, with timestamps, with commentary explaining exactly what had been removed and why. Screenshots of the original misleading post followed. The caption now impossible to read without seeing the harm it had caused. Public anger sharpened and changed direction. Comment sections filled with something new. "We were wrong. He saved her life. We helped turn that into hate." People reposted their own earlier words with heartfelt apologies attached beneath them. Others deleted posts altogether, though the screenshots remained, floating like ghosts. The memes shifted. Not jokes, tributes. Drawn images appeared first. Soft lines. A small Necco figure on a grass verge, arms out, ears flat in fear, tail low, but feet planted all the same. Captions were simple. "He stood, we didn't." Another read, "Heroes aren't always big or loud." Some were painstakingly made, clearly drawn by people who needed to do something with their regret. Little intricate details added. Time spent on the eyes, trying to get them right. On the softness of the fur on his ears. On the expression itself, the fear there, unmistakable, but held together by determination. The kind of care that only comes from humbleness and honesty. These weren't made for laughs. They were made as apologies. Sam did not see any of this, yet. He lay in a hospital bed, lights dimmed low, monitors humming softly, his head wrapped and aching, in a way that made time feel unreal. Pain came and went in slow waves. Sleep was shallow. Dreams bled into waking. Mia sat beside him most of the time. She found out the world had turned when a nurse came in holding a phone, hesitating in the doorway, like she wasn't sure whether to speak. "They've been showing it on the news," she said gently. "The full video." Mia stared at the screen. She watched it once, then again. Not because she hadn't seen it before, but because she needed to see what everyone else was finally seeing. Her son, standing his ground, doing the right thing. She pressed her hand flat against her chest, breath shaking. The first flowers arrived that same evening. Then cards. Then more flowers. They filled the small table by the window, then the shelf beneath it. Nurses brought extra vases. Someone found a jug. Another arrived with a box meant for notes and letters, because the pile had started to tip. Messages came from strangers, from hospital staff who hadn't been on shift that day, from people who lived nearby, from people who didn't. "Thank you for saving her. I'm sorry I judged you. You did what so many of us hope we would do." An anonymous fundraiser appeared quietly online. No speech, no campaign. Just, "For Sam. Recovery and support." Money trickled in at first, then surged. Small donations, large ones. Notes attached, often anonymous, often raw. Mia read some aloud to Sam when he was awake enough to listen. Others she kept to herself, pressed to her chest when the room was quiet. At school, the shift happened without Sam there to witness it. The noise that had fed on him lost its confidence. People spoke his name differently now, softer, with shame attached. Teachers corrected students more sharply. Filming stopped. The cruelty didn't vanish, but it no longer had permission. Callum visited when he could, sitting quietly, sometimes talking, sometimes not. He brought nothing dramatic, just presence, and he kept coming back. Sam listened more than he spoke. He didn't understand all of it yet. The scale, the turn, the sudden warmth replacing the cold. But he understood one thing. The truth had finally caught up. It hadn't erased what had happened to him, but it was no longer being compounded. Influence. Chapter 15. The Visit. Morning arrived in thin strips of light across the hospital blinds. Sam was awake, but only just. The kind of awake where his eyes opened, then drifted, then focused again, as if his mind had to make a fresh effort each time. His head still ached beneath the bandage. The ache was duller than yesterday, but it had a reach to it that made him cautious about moving too quickly. The cards and flowers had multiplied overnight. Someone had arranged them along the windowsill in a line that looked almost careful, as if the room deserved to be tidy for him. Vases had been borrowed from all over the hospital, but Jug had become a makeshift vase too. A stack of envelopes sat in a neat pile beside a small tin of shortbread a nurse had left for him. Mia sat in the chair beside him, with her hands clasped in her lap. She looked as if she had not slept properly, but she was there, present, watching him in the way mothers watch sons who had almost been taken. Callum arrived mid-morning. No dramatic entrance, no big gesture. He stepped in quietly, nodded at Mia, then came to the side of the bed and paused, as if he wasn't sure whether his presence helped or bothered. Sam's ears moved when he noticed him. A small lift, then a cautious settling back. Callum didn't speak at first. He just stood there for a moment, eyes on Sam, then on the bandage, then on the IV line, then away again. "How you doing?" he asked at last, voice low. Sam blinked slowly. His throat felt dry. "I've been better," he managed, "but I'll get there again." Callum's jaw tightened, then he gave a small nod, as if he accepted that as an honest answer. A knock came at the door. It wasn't loud. It didn't demand. Just a gentle tap, followed by a pause. Mia looked up, immediately wary. A female voice spoke through the door, careful and measured. "Sam, may we come in?" Sam's body tensed before he could stop it. His ears flattened halfway, then hovered, caught between fear and curiosity. Mia squeezed his hand. "Who is it?" The door opened slowly. 2 police officers stood there. 1 woman, 1 man. They kept their posture small, respectful, as if they understood they were stepping into a place where a loud voice would be cruelty. The woman spoke first. "I'm Officer Patel. This is Officer Hughes." Neither of them moved closer than the foot of the bed. Officer Patel's eyes went briefly to Sam's bandage, then to his face, then away again, not avoiding him, just giving him room. "Don't worry," she said. "You're not in trouble." Sam's fingers tightened under Mia's hand. His voice came out thin. "Okay." Officer Patel nodded. "We came because what happened to you is a serious criminal matter. We also came because you have rights, and you deserve to understand what happens next." Mia leaned forward. "Have you caught them?" Officer Hughes answered, calm and plain. "Yes. 3 boys from Sam's school. Identified and arrested. Several witnesses. The school has CCTV that supports the timeline." Mia shut her eyes for a moment. Her shoulders rose with a breath she tried to keep quiet. Sam stared at the blanket. His mind pulled the scene up without warning. The corner behind the gym, the shove, the impact, the burst of pain, and then the wet warmth he hadn't understood until Callum's hands were on his head and someone was screaming. He swallowed hard. Officer Patel watched him and softened her tone even further. "You don't have to say anything today, Sam. This is not an interview. We're just here to explain what happens next." Sam nodded barely. She went on, slow and clear. There would be statements taken. Some already had been. There would be charges. That part would be decided by the courts, based on evidence, the level of harm, the intent, the history. There would also be questions, because there was more to this than a single attack. The online aspect, the way people had been primed, the way it had spread. Sam listened like someone trying to follow a lesson while exhausted. When she finished, Officer Patel paused, then spoke gently. "Sam, one of your rights is to support a prosecution. Another is to say you don't want that. We want to hear your feelings on this." Sam's lips parted, then closed. He looked at Mia first, as if he needed permission to speak. Mia didn't speak. She only held his hand tighter. Sam looked back at Officer Patel. "I don't want anyone's lives ruined, or for anyone to get hurt," he said quietly. Callum's head turned sharply, as if the words hit him in a place he hadn't guarded. Officer Patel didn't look surprised. She looked sad. Sam continued, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want revenge. I just want it to stop." Officer Patel nodded once. "I understand." Officer Hughes spoke from the side, calmly. "Sam, you do understand. You didn't do anything wrong, right?" Sam blinked hard. His throat tightened. "I keep thinking I must have. Something. Somewhere." Mia shook her head at once. "No." Callum's hands curled at his sides, then relaxed again, as he forced himself to stay quiet. Officer Patel leaned forward slightly, still keeping her distance. "Sam, what you're describing is common after a shock. Your mind tries to find a way it could have prevented it. That doesn't mean any of it was your fault." Sam stared at her. Something in him wanted to accept it. Something in him didn't know how. Officer Patel continued. "Your preferences matter. We will record it. But we need to be honest with you." Sam's ears dipped, a clear sign of worry. "This case will likely proceed regardless," she said, "because the harm is severe. There is an abundance of evidence. There were witnesses, and because there are safeguarding concerns at the school." Sam's mouth tightened. "So I don't get a say?" Officer Patel's voice remained gentle. "You do get a say about how you participate. You also get a choice about whether you give a statement. You'll also get support, but the law has a duty here." She paused, choosing words carefully. "This is not about punishing on your behalf," she said. "It is about preventing that harm from being normalized. Preventing the next person being cornered, hurt, or worse." Sam's eyes lowered. He looked small in the bed in a way that had nothing to do with his body, and everything to do with how much he'd been asked to carry. Mia's voice broke slightly. "He's not made for this." Officer Patel's expression softened. "I can see that." There was a quiet stretch of silence. Sam whispered, "If they go to prison, their families will miss them." Callum's chest tightened. He had known Sam was forgiving. He hadn't understood how far it went until that moment. Officer Hughes answered carefully. "The consequences reach outwards. That's true. But someone chose violence. Those choices have weight." Sam flinched faintly, as if the word violence itself hurt. Officer Patel reached into her pocket and placed a card on the small table near the door, not on the bed. A small gesture, but it mattered. No invasion of his space. "If you want to speak to us later, you can," she said. "If you do not, that's also fine." Officer Hughes nodded once at Callum and Mia, then returned his attention to Sam. "Rest, heal. That's your priority for now." He closed his notebook, but did not stand yet. "There is one other matter," he said gently, "and I need to be clear about it." Sam's fingers curled into the blanket. "If this is about her," he said quietly, "I don't want anyone else getting hurt. Madison made a mistake. People do. I don't want her punished because of me." Mia's hand tightened around his. Officer Hughes listened without interrupting. When Sam finished, he nodded again, slower this time. "I hear you, Sam," he said, "and it matters that we hear your side of things." Callum shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He had been holding his tongue. It showed in the tension through his shoulders. "With respect," he said, voice controlled but edged now, "this wasn't just a mistake." Sam glanced at him, startled. Callum looked back, steady but not hard. She didn't misunderstand what she filmed. She deliberately chose to leave out context and crucial details. She clearly chose those inflammatory words and directly accused Sam of being predatory. Even when she found out what had happened to Sam, she still refused to tell the truth. Officer Hughes did not disagree. "What happened to Sam," Callum continued, "it didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't an accident. People thought they were justified in attacking him. And that belief came directly from her post." Sam shook his head faintly. "I don't want this to turn into more." "It won't," Officer Hughes said calmly. "Not in the way you're imagining. But genuine harm occurred, Sam. Serious harm. The law doesn't ask you to carry that weight, especially when you were the one harmed. But it does need to act on it." Sam's ears drooped, conflicted. "She didn't hit me," he said. "She wasn't the one who pushed me." "No," Officer Hughes replied. "But her actions materially contributed to you being pushed, and subsequently harmed. That is not a judgment. That is a fact we have to account for." Mia finally spoke, voice quiet but firm. "Sam would take this all on himself if you let him." Officer Hughes met her eyes, was starting to realize that. He nodded slowly. "Don't worry, we'll make certain that won't happen." He turned back to Sam. "You are not being asked to press charges," he said. "You won't need to confront anyone or relive anything. Whatever happens will proceed without you needing to be involved beyond what's already happened," the officer continued. "Because that is how the law works, and how it should be." Callum exhaled slowly, some of the tension leaving him. "So what about Madison?" he asked. Officer Hughes chose his words carefully. "She's been formally questioned. Her devices have been seized, and are part of an ongoing investigation." Sam swallowed. "I didn't want her ruined." Officer Hughes's voice softened. "Accountability is not necessarily ruin, Sam, and what happens next is not for you to be concerned or worry about." He stood then, finally. "Your job, Sam," he said, giving a reassuring smile, "is just to get better. That's all you need to focus on, okay?" Uncertain but accepting, the door closed quietly behind them. Influence, Chapter 16. After the noise. Recovery did not arrive all at once. It came in fragments. Sam learned the shape of his days again, slowly. Mornings where his head felt clear enough to sit up without nausea. Afternoons where light no longer stabbed behind his eyes. Nights where sleep stayed longer than an hour at a time. Fear lingered in his body even when his mind told him he was safe. Sudden sounds still made his ears flatten before he could stop them. Crowds felt sharper than they used to. Mia stayed close without smothering. She learned when to sit beside him and when to give him space. They fell back into old rhythms, altered but intact. Tea at the kitchen table, quiet meals, shared silences that didn't need filling. When Sam returned to school, it was not with fanfare. It was careful. Some people avoided him, not out of cruelty this time, but embarrassment. They didn't know where to look. Others met his eyes and nodded, awkward but sincere. A few spoke to him outright, voices low, words clumsy but honest. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I should have said something." More than that, people noticed. When laughter edged toward cruelty, it was shut down. When phones came out, someone intervened. When Sam sat alone, someone drifted closer. He did not suddenly belong everywhere. But the ground beneath him no longer shifted. Callum stayed, not loudly, not possessively, just there. Walking beside him between classes, sitting with him at lunch, waiting without asking when Sam needed a moment before moving again. The age difference stopped meaning anything. What grew between them was something sturdier than friendship, shaped by shared fear and shared refusal to walk away. Callum understood him without explanation. The way his ears betrayed him. The way he flinched before he could think. The way gentleness was not weakness, but nature. Over time, it became normal to see them together, moving through the day side by side. The hospital welcomed Sam back like family. On his first day volunteering again, he barely made it past the desk. People hugged him, some cried. Someone had baked cake. It was overwhelming in the best way. Helping again felt grounding. Familiar corridors, small tasks, quiet usefulness. It reminded him who he had always been, long before the world decided to argue about it. Madison's name surfaced less and less. When it did, it was without admiration. Her account vanished quietly. No dramatic farewell, no apology video, just absence. Contracts dissolved, invitations stopped. Her face became associated not with influence, but with shame. Juvenile sentencing followed. 6 months jail time. Community service that stretched into years, far beyond what she expected. There was no public reckoning, no spectacle. Just consequence. Sam did not rejoice. He did not hate her. He simply accepted that actions carried weight, whether she understood that or not. Life continued. Not unchanged, never unchanged, but quieter. Influence. Chapter 17. End image. The legal process took longer than anyone wanted it to. Weeks became months. Dates shifted. Hearings were postponed. Paperwork accumulated in quiet offices, while lives waited on the other side of closed doors. Sam was not part of it. He was never asked to speak in court. Never asked to sit across from the boys who had hurt him. The state did not need his words. The evidence was enough. Witnesses, CCTV, medical reports, statements from teachers and students who had seen the aftermath. Still, Sam felt the weight of it. He felt it in the way his stomach tightened whenever the subject came up, in the guilt that crept in during quiet moments, uninvited and stubborn, whispering that everything might have gone differently if he had been different. Callum told him the outcome on a gray afternoon, sitting with him at the kitchen table. Mia was there too, hands wrapped tightly around a mug she had forgotten to drink from. Ryan's sentence came first. Aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury, with a group assault enhancement, reduced by plea. 5 years, eligible for parole after 3, contingent on mandatory anger management programs. Long-term psychological evaluations, with reviews spaced so far apart they barely felt real. As Callum spoke, Sam's ears lowered slowly, the movement involuntary. "That's a long time," Sam said after a while. Callum nodded, his voice stayed even, but his jaw tightened. "Yeah, it is." Sam stared at the table, at the small nick in the wood where someone had dropped something years ago. He traced it with his finger. "I didn't want that," he said quietly. "I know," Callum replied at once. "I never wanted them to lose everything," Sam added. "I never wanted anyone to get hurt. I just wanted it all to stop." Callum leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. "Sam, listen to me." Sam looked up. "This didn't happen because of you," Callum said. "It happened because someone chose violence, and then chose it again, and again." Sam shook his head faintly. "If that video hadn't been posted, if people hadn't thought—" "No," Callum interrupted gently but firmly. "If they hadn't attacked you." The words settled heavily between them. Mia spoke then, her voice soft but unbreakable. "It's sad," she said. "All of it is sad. For everyone involved." She was right. Ryan's parents emptied savings they had never expected to touch. The other two boys were expelled. No appeals, no return. Scholarships vanished overnight. A team collapsed. A school quietly rewrote its future. So much damage, radiating outward from one moment of cruelty and one deliberate lie. Sam felt the sadness of it deeply. He felt it for the boys who had hurt him, for their families, for the way everything had gone wrong so quickly and so completely. But beneath it all, one truth remained clear. None of it had been his fault. Callum felt it too, even if he didn't say it aloud. These boys had once been his friends, not good friends, not kind ones, but familiar faces, familiar voices. Losing them hurt in a different way. It did not soften what they had done, it only made the cost impossible to ignore. Life continued, unevenly at first, then with more confidence. Sam walked normally again, the same streets, the same route, some days slower than others. No one rushed him, no one needed to. He noticed things differently now. He noticed who stepped closer when voices rose, who quietly placed themselves between him and someone else when tension crept in, who stayed without announcing why. It wasn't protection in the dramatic sense. It was consideration, and Sam didn't quite know what to do with it at first. For most of his life, attention had meant risk. Being seen meant being assessed, judged, weighed. Now, being noticed felt different. Not hungry, not sharp, just present. It unsettled him. Some nights, lying awake with the dull ache still lingering in his head, Sam wondered if he deserved any of it. The care, the gentleness, the way people spoke to him now. Slower, more thoughtful, as if he mattered in ways he had never been allowed to believe before. He thought of the courtroom he never entered, the boys he never saw again, the anger that had almost ended him, and the woman on the verge. He still saw her face sometimes, still heard the shouting, the fear in it, still felt the certainty that had filled him in that moment, clearer than anything else in his life. She cannot go any further. That knowledge had not left him. It sat inside him now, quieter, heavier, a truth he carried, rather than a memory he fled from. Callum understood that Sam wasn't haunted by what people had done to him, but by the knowledge of what might have happened if he hadn't acted. They didn't talk about the pace much anymore, or the sentences, or Madison. Those things had settled into the past, where they belonged. What mattered was what came after. Callum walked with him most days, sometimes all the way home, sometimes just part of it. Sometimes they sat on the low wall near the shops and said nothing at all. What bound them wasn't time or shared history, but the fact that Callum had seen Sam at his most vulnerable and lowest state, and had stayed anyway. That mattered more than Sam could ever put into words. The world was still complicated, still capable of harm, still imperfect in ways Sam understood more clearly now. But it had not broken him. He had been frightened, hurt, changed. And still, he was himself. He was not the same boy who had stood on that grass verge months earlier, heart racing, hands shaking as he tried to do the right thing. He carried scars now, a dull ache that surfaced when he was tired, moments when crowds made him slow without knowing why. But he carried other things too. A friend who had chosen him when it mattered, a mother who held him a little longer than she used to, and the quiet certainty that, when it counted, he had acted with kindness, even when the cost had been far higher than anyone should have had to pay. The world hadn't erased what happened. It hadn't softened it or explained it away. It had simply shown him that who he was still mattered. Thanks for listening. Influence was written by Finn Wilder. Please consider leaving a comment and subscribing. If you'd like to follow more of Finn's work, you can find more audiobook versions of his stories here on the channel. And the written versions are available on Wattpad. The link is included below. Your support is always appreciated and helps Finn create more stories.